Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Nightmare Narratives. I am your storyteller, and I'm here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious. Where are you watching from and what time is it in your part of the world? Now find your cozy spot and relax. My name is Thomas Ashworth. I've been a ranger at Olympic National Forest for 15 years now, and I thought I'd seen everything these ancient woods could throw at a man. I was wrong. This morning started like any other. The mist was rising from the moss-covered Douglas firs, creating these beautiful columns of light that seemed to connect earth and sky. I stood there for a moment, just watching, feeling that rare moment of peace wash over me. In the distance, I could hear the Roosevelt elk bugling, their calls mixing with the soft rumble of ocean waves from the Pacific coast. It reminded me of the hunting trips Margaret and I used to take before the cancer took her. I was about to radio in my morning check when something strange happened. A raven, perched on a nearby branch, suddenly stopped mid-caw. Then it just fell. It dropped dead from the tree and hit the ground without making a sound. I walked over to examine it but couldn't find any reason why a healthy bird would just die like that. That's when I noticed the shadows. The morning. Light was filtering through the canopy like always, but the shadows on the forest floor were moving in ways that had nothing to do with the wind. They seemed to shift and crawl across the ground with a purpose. My radio crackled with static, which was odd since I was at least 40 miles from anything that could cause interference. Just static, then nothing. I tried to adjust it, but it didn't. Help! I was still fiddling with my radio when a black bear cub wandered into the clearing. It wasn't afraid of me, which was unusual. It came close, sniffing the air, then suddenly froze. Its ears went back, and it bolted away like something had terrified it. But there was nothing there, at least nothing I could see. The weather. Forecast had promised clear skies for the next 3 days, but a thick fog was rolling in from the coast, fast, too fast to be natural. Within minutes, I could barely see 50 feet in front of me. As I walked along the trail, I noticed the old cedar markers. The ones carved by indigenous peoples hundreds of years ago. They looked different. Fresh scratches ran across their ancient surfaces, as if something with massive claws had recently passed by and marked them. The air pressure dropped so suddenly that my ears popped, and the temperature, it plummeted at least 15 degrees in a matter of minutes. I zipped up my jacket, feeling a chill that went deeper than the cold air. Something was very wrong in my forest today. In 15 years, I'd never felt anything like this before. The woods that had always been my sanctuary suddenly felt alien and threatening. I should have turned back right then. I should have called for backup, but I didn't. That was my first mistake. I noticed my hands were shaking a bit as I checked my compass. It wasn't fear. At least that's what I told myself. It was the bourbon. I hadn't had my morning drink yet, something that had become a daily ritual since Margaret's funeral 3 years ago. My fingers went to the scar on my left temple, an old habit when I'm nervous. I got it in Khe Sanh, Vietnam, a sniper's bullet that missed killing me by less than an inch. Sometimes I wonder why I lived when so many of my friends didn't make it home. I reached into my pocket and pulled out Margaret's silver locket. I always carry it with me. Inside is her photo, smiling the way she did before the cancer took that smile away. "I'm sorry, Maggie," I whispered, like I always do. Sorry for surviving. When she didn't. If you saw me now, you'd probably cross the street. My cheeks are hollow, my eyes always bloodshot, and I've got this grey beard I used to hide how much I've aged since losing her. The rangers at the station say I look like a man who's seen a ghost. Maybe I have. A soft whine brought me back to the present. Grim, my German shepherd, was looking up at me with those knowing eyes. He's the best search and rescue dog in the county and the only living thing I truly trust anymore. He nudged my hand, sensing my unease. "It's okay, boy," I said, but we both knew it wasn't. I adjusted the rifle slung over my shoulder, my grandfather's Winchester 30-06. Rangers aren't supposed to carry firearms this powerful, but after 30 years, this gun feels like a part of me. It saved my life more than once. Grim's ears suddenly perked up, and he turned to face deeper into the forest. He growled, a low warning sound I'd never heard him make before. I know this forest better than I know my own face. Every tree, every stream, every animal trail for miles around. After 15 years walking these paths, I can tell when something doesn't belong. And right now, everything felt wrong. A smarter man would have turned back. But since Margaret died, I've had this recklessness, this curiosity that borders on a death wish. Part of me has wanted to join her for a long time now. My Marine training was screaming danger, but my grief pushed me forward. I patted the Winchester and whistled for Grim to follow. "Let's check it out, boy." Looking back, I realize now how unprepared I was. Nothing in my military training or 15 years as a ranger could have prepared me for what was waiting in those woods. Some things exist beyond human understanding, and once you've seen them, you can never unsee them. As Grim and I headed deeper into the fog, I had no idea we were walking straight into a nightmare. The fog grew thicker as Grim and I pushed deeper into the forest. That's when I saw it, a footprint in the soft earth that made my blood run. Cold. It was huge, at least 19 inches long. It had 6 toes instead of 5, and it was pressed so deep into the ground that it had cracked the rock underneath. Whatever made this print would have to weigh at least 500 pounds. "What do you make of this, boy?" I asked Grim, but he just whined and backed away from the print. That's when I noticed something else strange. The forest had gone completely silent. No birds singing, no insects buzzing, not even the sound of leaves rustling. It was as if someone had hit a mute button on the entire woods. Even the wind had stopped blowing. About 50 yards ahead, I spotted a Douglas fir that had been snapped clean in half, about 15 feet up from the ground. The break wasn't jagged, like storm damage. It was a clean snap, like someone had broken it with their bare hands. That would take thousands of pounds of force. A strange taste filled my mouth. Metallic, like copper or blood. The air around us suddenly stank of sulfur and rotting meat. It was so strong my eyes watered. Grim sneezed repeatedly, pouring at his nose. We pushed on and came across a campsite that made my stomach drop. The tent was torn to shreds, but from the inside out, like someone had been trying to escape something inside with them. The sleeping bag was soaked in what looked horribly like fresh blood. "Hello?" I called out. "Park ranger, is anyone hurt?" My voice seemed to die a few feet from my mouth, swallowed by the unnatural fog. I pulled out my radio to call for backup, but it let out a piercing screech of feedback that made Grim howl in pain. Then it went dead. The battery was full, but it was completely dead. That's when I heard it. A roar so deep I felt it more than heard it. It vibrated through my chest cavity, making my heart skip beats. I actually got dizzy and had to grab a tree to steady myself. "Come on, Grim," I whispered. "Let's keep moving." About 100 yards further, I stopped dead in my tracks. 20 feet up in a tree hung the carcass of a deer. Its organs were missing, but there wasn't a drop of blood on the ground below. Nothing I knew, not bears, not cougars, could do something like that. The fog had gotten so thick I could barely see 10 feet in any direction. I decided it was time to head back to the ranger station and bring a team to investigate. But when I turned around, the trail was gone. The landmarks I knew by heart had vanished. My compass was spinning wildly, and my GPS showed me in 5 different locations at once. It was as if the landscape itself was changing around us. "We need to get out of here, Grim," I said, trying to keep the fear out of my voice. But as I looked around at the unfamiliar forest that should have been as familiar as my own backyard, I realized we might already be trapped. The fog swirled around us like a living thing. I squinted, trying to see through it, when something moved about 30 yards ahead. At first I thought it was just shadows playing tricks on my eyes, but then I saw it clearly, a massive shape standing in the mist. It was huge, at least 9 feet tall, covered in dark matted fur like some prehistoric beast. My mouth went dry. In 15 years in these woods, I'd never seen anything like it. "Stay," I whispered to Grim, who was growling low in his throat. I raised my binoculars slowly. Through the fog, I could make out more details, and each one made my heart beat faster. Its arms were unnaturally long, almost reaching the ground. At the end of those arms were black claws that scraped against the tree bark with a sound that set my teeth on edge. But it was the eyes that really got to me, glowing amber red in the darkness, watching us with what I can only describe as intelligence. Not animal intelligence, but something calculating, something that knew exactly what it was doing. I reached slowly for my Winchester, but before I could raise it, something impossible happened. "Tommy, come home to me." It was Margaret's voice. Exactly her voice. The warm, gentle way she used to call me before the chemo took her strength. Away. It came from the direction of the creature. "That's not possible," I whispered. Grim pressed against my leg, trembling. The creature, the sabe, as the local tribes called it, moved around us in a wide circle, always staying just out of clear rifle range. It was herding us, I realized with a chill, herding us toward the steep canyon edge about a quarter-mile east. I raised my Winchester and fired a warning shot. The creature didn't even flinch. I aimed directly at it and fired again. The bullet seemed to pass right through it as if it wasn't fully solid. "Tommy, why did you leave me alone?" Margaret's voice again, but distorted now, angry. The creature knew exactly how to hurt me worst. It would disappear for minutes at a time, then suddenly be much closer, watching us with those glowing eyes. Sometimes it seemed curious, tilting its head like it was studying us. Other times it would explode in rage, smashing trees and roaring so loudly I felt it in my bones. Once it got within 20 yards and let out a low growl that was somehow wrong. It hit some frequency that bypassed my brain completely and triggered pure animal fear. I'm not ashamed to admit I lost control of my bladder. 30 years in the military and 15 in these woods, and I was suddenly as helpless as a child. When we tried to move away from the canyon, it cut us off, appearing suddenly out of the fog. It screamed, a sound so terrible it seemed to bend reality around us. The trees appeared to twist into impossible shapes. The ground rippled like water. I thought I was losing my mind. "It's not real," I told myself. "It can't be real." But Grim saw it too. And when he's scared, I know the danger is real. The forest itself felt hostile now. Branches snagged my clothes. Roots seemed to rise up to trip me. Every stream we tried to cross had suddenly changed direction, blocking our escape routes. I realized with growing horror that we weren't dealing with some undiscovered animal. This was something else entirely, something that could change its shape, mimic voices, and maybe even control the forest itself. And it was driving us exactly where it wanted us to go. As the creature herded us toward the canyon edge, a desperate plan started forming in my mind. About half a mile north was an old-growth cedar grove I knew well. The terrain there might give us an advantage. Narrow passages, high ground, places to hide. "Come on, Grim," I whispered. "We need to make a run for it." We sprinted north, dodging between trees. The sabe roared behind us, the sound shaking leaves from branches. The fog seemed to part just enough to let us see where we were going, almost like it wanted us to reach the grove. We came to an icy mountain stream that cut through the forest. The rocks were slippery and treacherous. I crossed carefully, Grim swimming behind me. The water was so cold it made my legs ache, but fear kept me moving. The cedar grove appeared ahead, massive ancient trees creating a natural maze. The canyon walls rose on either side, creating a narrow passage that would force the creature to come at us head-on. "This is it, boy," I said to Grim. "We make our stand here." I unslung my pack and pulled out something I wasn't supposed to. A breeze, a small bundle of explosives left over from my days clearing trails. It wasn't much, but placed right, it might trigger a rock slide. The sky darkened suddenly, as if night had fallen in minutes. Lightning flashed, illuminating the forest in brief, terrifying snapshots. A storm had appeared out of nowhere, the wind now howling through the trees. "Tommy!" Margaret's voice called from the shadows. "Why are you running from me?" I positioned myself on a narrow stone bridge over a 200-foot waterfall gorge. If the creature wanted me, it would have to cross that bridge. Thunder cracked overhead as rain began to pour. Through the curtain of water, I saw the massive shape of the Sabe approaching slowly, confidently, like it knew I had nowhere left to run. Grim growled beside me, hackles raised. Then before I could stop him, he charged at the creature, teeth bared. "Grim, no!" I shouted. The Sabe swung one massive arm, catching Grim mid-leap and sending him flying. He hit a boulder with a yelp of pain and lay still. I could see he was breathing, but barely. Something snapped inside me. Maybe it was seeing Grim hurt. Maybe it was hearing it use Margaret's voice one too many times. But in that moment, I stopped being afraid. I knew I couldn't escape. I knew this thing, whatever it was more powerful than anything I could fight with conventional weapons. But I also knew I couldn't let it take Grim. I set the explosives quickly at the base of the canyon wall, right where the rock looked unstable. The Sabe was on the bridge now, moving toward me with those long arms extended, claws scraping on stone. "You want me?" I shouted over the storm. "Come and get me!" It roared in response. That reality-bending scream that made the bridge itself seem to warp and twist beneath my feet. I stumbled back, nearly falling over the edge into the churning waters below. The creature advanced, those glowing eyes fixed on me. It was so close now I could smell its ancient, musty odor, like something that had been buried for centuries and recently dug itself out. My hand found the detonator in my pocket. I looked over at Grim, still lying motionless on the rocks. Then I looked at the silver locket around my neck. "I'm coming, Margaret," I whispered, "for real this time." The Sabe lunged at me just as I pressed the detonator. The explosion wasn't big, but it was enough. The canyon wall cracked, then collapsed, in a thunderous avalanche of rock and earth. The bridge shuddered under the impact. I saw the look of surprise, yes, surprise, in those inhuman eyes as the rock slide hit us both. The last thing I remember is falling, the creature's howl, mixing with the roar of the collapsing mountainside. I don't know how long I was buried. It could have been minutes or hours. I woke to something wet on my face, Grim's tongue. Somehow he had survived and dug me out from under a pile of smaller rocks and dirt. My legs were pinned, but I was alive. Of the Sabe, there was no sign, just a massive pile of rubble where the bridge had been. Grim was hurt badly. I could tell by the way he was breathing that he had broken ribs, maybe internal bleeding. But he stayed by my side, licking my face, refusing to leave, even when I ordered him to go get help. I drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes I thought I heard Margaret's voice, but it was different now, gentle, loving. The way she used to sound, not the twisted version the creature had used. 3 days later, a search team found us. Grim was still there, standing guard over me despite his injuries. They said it was a miracle either of us survived. I never told them the full story. How could I? They'd think I was crazy or drunk or both. I just said there was an earthquake, a rock slide. They believed me because the evidence was right there. But sometimes at night I hear that scream echoing through the trees. And 6 months later, they closed that entire section of Olympic forest after 3 hikers disappeared without a trace. The rangers who flew over the area said the trees around where I was found had grown into a perfect spiral pattern. They said it wasn't natural. Nothing would grow there anymore. Grim recovered, though he limps now when it rains. I've stopped drinking mostly. Some nights are still hard, but I feel like I've been given a second chance. I don't know if the Sabi is really gone, or if it's just waiting, buried under tons of rock, or maybe existing in some form I can't understand. But I know the forest has changed, and I've changed with it. Sometimes, when the fog rolls in, I grab my Winchester and keep Grim close, just in case. Because once you've seen what's really hiding in the screaming pines of Olympic Forest, you never truly feel safe again. My name is Catherine Blackstone. I'm 28 years old, a park ranger at Bridger Teton National Forest in Wyoming, and a mother to two beautiful twin girls, Emma and Lucy. Before I had my daughters, I was a railroad engineer. That might seem strange for a woman my age, but trains have always been in my blood. Tonight, I'm walking along an old, abandoned railroad track that cuts through the forest. The rails are rusty, but somehow they still catch the moonlight, glinting like silver ribbons through the trees. The wind blows through the old telegraph wires that still hang alongside the tracks, making a sad, singing sound. In the distance, I can hear coyotes howling. I run my fingers along the cold metal of the rail, feeling that familiar tug at my heart. I had such big dreams of being an engineer, following in my grandfather's footsteps. Then I had my girls, and everything changed. Don't get me wrong, I love being their mom more than anything. But sometimes I miss the feel of a throttle in my hand and the power of a locomotive responding to my touch. Something catches my eye overhead. An owl, flying low, suddenly drops from the sky as if it hit something solid. But there's nothing. Yet there, just empty air above the tracks. I run over to where it fell. Its neck is broken, like it flew full speed into a wall. But there's no wall, nothing but clear night air. I look up at the stars, noticing how they seem to dim right above. The railroad, as if something huge is blocking their light. But I can't see anything there. My radio crackles to life, startling me. Instead of the usual park ranger chatter, I hear music, old-timey big band stuff from the 1940s. I check the frequency, confused. There's no broadcast tower within 200 miles that could be sending this signal. A mountain goat appears on the slope nearby, curious and bold as they often are. It steps toward the tracks, then suddenly jumps backward like it got shocked. It runs away, bleating in fear. I take a step closer to where it was, feeling the hairs on my arms stand up. That's when I notice the fog. It's rising straight from the railroad bed, even though the ground is bone dry. The mist carries a smell that takes me right back to my engineering days, coal smoke and hot metal. But these tracks haven't seen a train in 50 years. I kneel down to examine one of the railroad ties. The spikes holding the rails look freshly hammered in, not decades old. That can't be right. According to the forest records, this line was abandoned back in the 20s. Suddenly the temperature drops so fast I can see my breath. I pull out my compass and the needle goes crazy, spinning in wild circles instead of pointing north. Something is very wrong here. I reach into my shirt pocket and pull out the worn photo of Emma and Lucy. Their smiling faces remind me why I need to stay safe, why I need to be careful. But I also pull out my grandfather's old railroad pocket watch. He died in a train accident. Back in 1925, a mysterious derailment that was never fully explained. Ranger Blackstone, you find anything interesting? The voice belongs to Dr. Frank Morrison, a geologist who's been studying unusual mineral deposits along these old tracks. He's 41, smart, and completely focused on rocks and soil samples instead of the weird things happening around us. Something's not right with these tracks, I tell him, tucking the watch and photo away. I'm still carrying my grandfather's old railroad lantern, even though I have a modern flashlight. My mother always said the lantern brought luck to railroad workers. Right now I'll take all the luck I can get. The grade here is wrong, I say, more to myself than to Morrison. My training kicks in automatically. I can tell by looking that the slope of the tracks doesn't match what it should be. Years of studying historical railroad maps have taught me every curve, grade and trestle along this 200-mile stretch. What do you mean? Morrison asks, looking up from his soil sample. These tracks, they're different somehow. The measurements are off. I can feel my safety-first mindset taking over. In railroad work, being precise keeps people alive. I should turn back. Every instinct is screaming that something dangerous is happening here. But that same training that makes me cautious also makes me need to investigate. If there's a problem with these tracks, I need to understand it. What I don't realize yet is that the danger ahead won't follow any rules I learned in engineering school. The force building around us doesn't care about physics or railroad safety protocols. It operates by the rules of damnation. Morrison and I keep walking along the tracks. The night is getting darker, and that strange feeling in my stomach won't go away. Then I see them, railroad lanterns hanging in the air, about 8 feet above the tracks. They're burning with blue flames, not yellow or white like normal fire, and they're arranged in a perfect line, just like the old signal patterns used to warn trains of danger ahead. Do you see those? I whisper to Morrison, pointing. He nods slowly, his face pale in the moonlight. That's not possible. I realize something else that makes my skin crawl. The forest has gone completely silent. No crickets chirping, no owls hooting, not even the sound of wind in the trees. The only thing I can hear is a distant rumbling, like a train coming from far away. We keep moving forward, and I spot something strange on the ground. The railroad ties, those wooden beams that hold the tracks in place, are glowing with a soft greenish light. I kneel down to look closer and notice there are names and dates carved into the wood. They look fresh, but no one should be out here carving on these old tracks. July 17th, 1902. William Barton, I read out loud. December 3rd, 1944. Sarah. Miller. Look at this one, Morrison says, pointing to another tie. That's tomorrow's date. My mouth suddenly tastes like I've been licking a battery, that sharp, metallic flavor. The smell of coal smoke is getting stronger too, making black wisps of vapor that hang in the still air. We round a bend and come across what looks like a small camp. There's a coffee pot sitting on a tiny fire, still warm. Backpacks and sleeping. Bags are scattered around, like the people using them just vanished in the middle of whatever they were doing. Hello, I call out. Forest Service, anyone here? No answer. I pull out my compass again, hoping it's working now, but the needle is still acting strange. It points straight down the tracks no matter which way I turn. It's like the tracks themselves have become magnetic north. Then I hear it, a train whistle, but it's like no whistle I've ever heard before. It makes a chord of notes that shouldn't be possible from a single whistle. The sound seems to surround us, coming from everywhere at once. There are no active trains in this area, I tell Morrison, my voice shaking a little. These tracks don't connect to any working lines anymore. We keep moving, and I notice something that makes no sense. A section of the track ahead looks brand new, shiny rails, fresh ties, clean gravel. But according to every map and record, no train has run here since the 1920s. The fog is getting thicker, but only right along the railroad. It's like a tunnel of mist has formed exactly along the tracks. Beyond, where the trees start, the air is perfectly clear. I can see stars twinkling above the forest, but not above us. Look at these, Morrison says, pointing at the gravel between the rails. Footprints, lots of them, but they're all going in one direction, toward whatever's coming, not away from it. It's like people were walking right into the path of an oncoming train. We should go back, I say, but even as the words leave my mouth, I know we won't. Something is pulling us forward, making us need to see what's at the end of these tracks. I grip my grandfather's lantern tighter, wishing its luck was more than just a family story. The rumbling is getting louder now. My watch has stopped working, so has Morrison's, but my grandfather's old pocket watch is still ticking, the hands moving backward. "Catherine," Morrison says quietly, using my first name instead of Ranger, Blackstone, for the first time. "I think we should—" He doesn't finish his sentence. In the distance, a light appears, a single bright beam cutting through the fog, a train headlight. But something is wrong with it. It's getting brighter and brighter, like it's coming toward us, but it never seems to get any closer. It's like the train is moving without moving. My heart is pounding now. Every bit of my railroad training is screaming that we're in danger. But this isn't a normal train, and these aren't normal tracks. Whatever's coming for us doesn't follow the rules of this world. We stand frozen, watching that bright headlight in the distance. It's been shining for what feels like hours, but the train never gets any closer. The tracks ahead are straight for at least a mile. We should be able to see the train by now, not just its light. Then, in the blink of an eye, everything changes. A huge steam locomotive appears out of nowhere, as if it stepped through a door in the air. It's an old model from the 1940s, with a massive black engine and a row of passenger cars behind it. The wheels aren't even touching the tracks. It's floating a few inches above them. "That's impossible," I whisper, my engineer's mind rejecting what my eyes are seeing. The engine's number on the side keeps changing, flickering between different numbers. 1912, 1925, 1944, 1957. Each number matches the year of a famous train crash I learned about in my training. Morrison's equipment starts beeping wildly. "The electromagnetic readings are off the charts," he says, his voice shaking. "And look, the train is passing through. A rock outcropping like it's not even there. The solid stone doesn't slow it down at... Although the locomotive just glides through it like a ghost. The train slows down as it approaches us, the massive wheels turning slower and slower. The whistle blows again, playing a melody so beautiful and sad that I feel tears in my eyes. For a moment, I have this crazy urge to walk toward the tracks, to get closer to that sound. "Don't listen to it," I tell Morrison, grabbing his arm. "Cover your ears." From the front of the engine, a cloud of steam billows out. But it's not normal steam. It swirls and shapes itself, and I swear I can see faces in it, people calling out. One of them looks exactly like my grandfather in the old photos I've seen. "Dad?" Morrison whispers beside me. "Dad, is that you?" I grab his shoulder. "It's not real, Morrison. Don't look at it." But his eyes are fixed on the steam, and he takes a step toward the tracks. That's when I see him, the conductor. He stands on the platform between cars, a tall figure wearing an old-fashioned uniform. His face is hidden in shadow, even though he's standing right under a lamp. In his hands is a clipboard, and he's writing something on it. The pen moves by itself, scratching out names in a language I've never seen before. The conductor turns, his head toward us, and even though I can't see his eyes, I know he's looking right at me. My grandfather's watch grows ice-cold in my pocket. Morrison steps forward again, drawn toward the train like a magnet. I try to pull him back, but suddenly the air between us feels thick, like moving through molasses. "The passenger manifest," Morrison mumbles. "I need to check the passenger manifest." "No, you don't," I say, pulling harder on his arm. "That's not a regular train." The locomotive seems to be watching us, waiting. When I look at it directly, parts of it seem to disappear, like it's fading in and out of our world. The air around it shimmers and warps, making me dizzy. I reach for my radio to call for help, but instead of static, I hear voices coming through, old-time conversations, train announcements, and cries for help, all mixed together. Some of the voices are calling my name. "Catherine Blackstone." One voice says clearly, "Your grandfather is waiting for you." I throw the radio to the ground. It keeps talking, even though it should be broken. The conductor steps down from the train, moving in a strange way, like he's both very fast and very slow at the same time. As he walks, the plants near the tracks wither and turn brown, like they're aging years in seconds. "Frank Morrison," the conductor says, his voice sounding like metal wheels on tracks. "Your seat is ready." Morrison nods like he's in a trance and takes another step forward. "No!" I grab him with both hands, but he's surprisingly strong. "Morrison, snap out of it!" The conductor raises his clipboard, and I see names written on it. Hundreds of names, with dates beside them. Some of the dates haven't happened yet. The train whistle blows again, and all the signal lanterns along the track turn red at once. Behind us, I hear the sound of switches moving, track junctions changing position all by themselves. The whole railroad is coming alive around us, creating a path for this phantom train. I look at the passenger cars and can see shadowy figures sitting inside. They press their hands against the windows, leaving frost patterns where they touch. Some of them look like they're crying. Others are just staring straight ahead, like they've been riding this train for a very, very long time. "It's collecting souls," I whisper, the terrible truth dawning on me. "Everyone who ever died in a train accident." The conductor takes another step toward us, and the air grows so cold, my breath turns to ice crystals. He holds out his hand, not to me, but to Morrison. "Your ticket," the conductor says. "Show me your ticket." And Morrison reaches into his pocket, pulling out something that looks like an old-fashioned train ticket that I know he didn't have before. "All aboard," the conductor says. "Final destination." "Morrison, don't!" I grab his arm as he takes another step toward the phantom train. "That's not a real ticket." For a second his eyes clear. He looks at the ticket in his hand like he's never seen it before. "Catherine, what's happening?" he asks, his voice shaky. "We need to run," I tell him, "now." The conductor makes a sound like steam escaping from a valve, a hiss of anger. He reaches for Morrison, his hand stretching unnaturally long. I pull Morrison away, and we start running along the tracks. Behind us, the phantom train begins to move again, following slowly but steadily. My mind races. I can't outrun a train, even a ghost one. But maybe I can stop it. My years of training as an engineer might save us. "There's a trestle bridge about a quarter-mile ahead," I tell Morrison as we run. "If we can get there first, I might be able to derail it." "Derail a ghost train?" Morrison pants. "How?" "It's using the real tracks," I say. "It's following the rules of the railroad, at least partly. That gives us a chance." We reach the trestle bridge, a narrow wooden structure spanning a deep gorge, at least 300 feet down to the rocks below. The bridge looks old and rickety, but we have no choice. We start across. The sky above us turns strange. Lightning flashes, but it moves backward from the ground up to the clouds. Thunder rolls, but it sounds like it's playing in reverse. "There!" I point to a manual switch at the far end of the bridge. "If I can throw that switch, it might send the train off into nothing." We're halfway across the trestle when Morrison suddenly stops. "Morrison!" I turn back to him. "Come on!" But he's staring back at the approaching train. The conductor is standing on the front of the engine now, holding up his clipboard. Morrison's eyes go blank again. "I need to board," he says in a flat voice. "My name is on the manifest." "No, it's not." I grab his shoulders and shake him. "That thing is lying to you." The train whistle blows, and Morrison jerks like he's been shocked. He starts walking back toward the oncoming train. "My seat is waiting," he mumbles. "I've always had a seat reserved." I try to hold him back, but he pushes me away with surprising strength. I stumble and nearly fall between the wooden ties of the trestle, catching myself just in time. "Morrison!" I scream. "Don't listen to it!" The phantom locomotive slows as it reaches the start of the trestle. The conductor points at Morrison, then at me. I can feel him trying to pull at my mind too, but something is protecting me. My hand closes around my grandfather's pocket watch. It's burning hot now. A terrible thought hits me. My grandfather died in a train accident in 1925. What if he's on that train? What if his soul is trapped there? The trestle begins to shake as the phantom train rolls onto it. The old wooden beams creak and groan under weight that shouldn't be real. I run to the switch at the end of the bridge. It's rusted in place after decades of disuse. I pull with all my strength, but it won't budge. Behind me, Morrison has reached the train. The conductor holds out a hand to help him board. "No!" I scream, abandoning the switch and running back toward them. "Morrison, don't get on that train!" Thunder crashes directly overhead. Rain begins to fall, but it's not normal rain. Each drop sizzles when it hits the metal rails, turning instantly to steam. I reach into my pocket and pull out my grandfather's watch. As I hold it up, the phantom train's whistle screams like it's in pain. "This doesn't belong to you," I shout at the conductor. "None of these souls belong to you." The conductor turns toward me, and for the first time, I can see under his hat. There's no face there, just swirling darkness and 2 points of light where eyes should be. Morrison is halfway up the steps to the train car. I lunge forward and grab his jacket, pulling him back. "Your daughters," I tell him, suddenly remembering he has 2 teenage girls at home. "Think about your daughters, Morrison. They need you to come home." Something flickers in his eyes. "My daughters?" The conductor hisses again and reaches for Morrison. I step between them, holding the pocket watch like a shield. "You can't have him," I say. "And I'm taking back what's mine." I don't know where the words come from, but I know what I have to do. I slam the pocket watch against the nearest rail as hard as I can. The watch shatters. There's a blinding flash of light, and the phantom train shrieks like a living thing, in pain. For just a second, I see my grandfather's face at one of the windows. He smiles at me, nods once, and then he's gone. The conductor's clipboard bursts into flames. Names begin disappearing from the list one by one, faster and faster. "No!" the conductor shrieks, his voice like metal tearing. "They belong to me! All who die on the rails belong to me!" "Not anymore," I say. The phantom train begins to fade, becoming transparent. Inside the passenger cars, the shadowy figures are vanishing like smoke in the wind. The conductor lunges at Morrison one last time, his fingers stretching like claws. I grab Morrison and pull him back, but I'm not strong enough. The conductor's hand closes around Morrison's arm. He begins to fade too, being pulled into whatever world the train exists in. "Catherine!" Morrison cries out, reaching for me with his free hand. I grab his hand and pull with everything I have. For a moment, we're locked in a tug-of-war with the phantom conductor. Then I remember the photo in my pocket. I pull it out, with my free hand. "My daughters," I say, showing it to Morrison, "they need me to come home, just like your girls need you." Morrison's eyes clear completely. He looks at the photo, then at the conductor trying to pull him away. "No," he says firmly, "I don't belong on your train." With a surge of strength, he pulls free from the conductor's grip. We both fall backward onto the trestle as the phantom train gives one last terrible scream. The locomotive, its cars, and the conductor all dissolve into mist. The clipboard falls to the tracks, bursts into blue flames, and vanishes. We lie there on the trestle, breathing hard as normal rain begins to fall. The thunder sounds right. Again, the night air smells clean with no trace of coal smoke. What happened?" Morrison asks, sitting up slowly. "I think my grandfather was trapped on that train," I say. "I think lots of people were, and I think we just set them free." Morrison looks down the now empty tracks. "Will it come back?" I pick up the broken pieces of my grandfather's watch. The hands have stopped moving, but they're pointing forward now, not backward. "I don't think so," I say. "Not here, anyway." We make our way off the trestle as the sun begins to rise. The old railroad tracks look truly abandoned now, rusty, broken in places, reclaimed by nature. As we walk back toward our ranger station, I can't help but wonder about other forgotten railroads, other places where the phantom conductor might still be collecting souls. But that's a worry for another day. Right now I just want to go home and hug my daughters. I look back one last time at the train tracks disappearing into the forest. For a second, I think I hear a distant whistle, but it's probably just the wind, probably. My name is Daniel Frostbane, and I've spent most of my life in these woods. The Superior National Forest has been my home for longer than I care to remember. But this winter, something changed. The snow had been falling for 3 days straight, covering everything in a blanket of white so pure it almost hurt your eyes to look at it. The pine trees bent under the weight, their branches creating tunnels of ice that looked like the inside of some frozen cathedral. When you've been out here as long as I have, you get used to the silence. But this was different. This silence felt like it was watching you back. I remember standing there, just listening to the wind moving through the frozen branches. It made a sound like someone humming a tune just at the edge of your hearing. Far off, wolves called to each other across the frozen lakes, those sounds used to comfort me. They were the voice of the forest I grew up in, the one my Ojibwe ancestors had walked through for generations. I was checking my traps when I saw it. A snowy owl, beautiful thing, flying straight and sure until suddenly it wasn't. It screeched, a sound of pure animal terror, and crashed right into a tree trunk. By the time I got there, its neck was broken. Nothing had touched it. Nothing I could see, anyway. That night, the northern lights appeared. Most folks would find that beautiful, but we were too far south. The aurora shouldn't have been visible here at all. The green lights danced overhead, casting shadows that seemed to move on their own across the snowdrifts. I tried calling in on my radio. Standard procedure when something unusual happens out here. Nothing but static. No matter which frequency I tried, I couldn't get through. It was like something had cut us off from the outside world. The next morning, I spotted an Arctic fox near my camp. Curious little thing, watching me with those intelligent eyes. Then, right before my eyes, it just froze. Not like an animal that stops moving. It literally froze solid, mid-step. Ice crystals formed across its fur in seconds. The temperature hadn't dropped. There was no wind. It just froze. That's when the blizzard hit. The sky had been clear blue not 10 minutes earlier, but suddenly I couldn't see more than a few feet in front of me. The wind howled so loud it drowned out my own thoughts. This wasn't in any forecast. Later, taking shelter in a cave, I knew. From childhood, I noticed something odd about the old Ojibwe pictographs on the rock wall. I'd seen them 100 times before. Hunting scenes, spirit animals, the usual stories. But now, when I looked at them from the corner of my eye, they seemed different. The figures had moved. They were telling a new story now, one about hunger and a thing that walks in winter storms. That night, the temperature plummeted to 40 below. Even for Minnesota in winter, that's not right. I huddled near my fire, listening to the wind. And in that wind, I could swear I heard whispers in a language no one has spoken for hundreds of years. My grandmother would have recognized it. Old Algonquian. The language of warnings. Something was out there in the darkness. Something the old stories talked about. Something hungry. My fingers ached as I tried to warm them by the fire. They never healed right after Korea. The doctors called it frostbite damage. But I knew it was more than that. Those prison camps took things from us that had no medical name. I rubbed the scars on my chest without thinking about it. After I came home from the war, I wasn't right in the head. My grandmother, wise in the old ways, suggested a vision quest. The traditional Ojibwe ceremony was supposed to help me find my path again. The scars are from that night alone in these same woods, seeking answers from spirits I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. I reached into my pocket and felt the small leather pouch of tobacco my grandmother had blessed for me. That pouch went with me to Korea. During the worst interrogations, I'd hold it in my mind, picturing each stitch, smelling the sweet tobacco. It kept me sane when others broke. Ranger Frostbane, I finished the deer count for this section. That was Janet Riverside, the young conservation officer who'd been assigned to work with me on the Winter Wildlife Survey. Fresh out of college, full of facts and figures, but zero experience with these woods. Her bright red parka stood out against the snow like a wound. 23 deer, 12 rabbits, and 1 wolf track that looked fresh, she continued, flipping through her notebook. Is that normal for this area? I nodded, not wanting to tell her that the numbers were about half what they should be. Something was keeping the animals away. We should head back to the cabin before dark, I said, picking up my grandfather's hunting knife. The bone handle was carved with our family clan symbols. The bear for strength, the eagle for vision. The old man had claimed those spirits protected him in these woods. I was starting to think we might need that protection. Janet looked at me with a mix of respect and confusion. You really know every inch of this place, don't you? 500 square miles, I said. Been hunting and tracking here since I was 10. My grandfather and the other elders taught me. The sun was already sinking, though it was barely past 3. Winter days are short up here, and the darkness comes hungry. Is everything okay? Janet asked. You seem on edge. I didn't answer right away. How could I explain? The signs were all around us. The unnatural cold, the vanishing animals, the strange lights. My grandmother would have recognized them instantly as signs of the Wendigo. But my college education and years working for the Park Service told me monsters weren't real. Just a storm coming, I finally said. We need to be careful out here. What I didn't say was that some storms bring more than snow and wind. Some storms bring things that turn your own survival instincts against you. Things that make the need for warmth and food twist into something darker. My grandmother's stories were specific about that part. How the Wendigo's greatest power wasn't its claws or teeth, but how it made you betray everything you loved just to survive another day. As we walked back to the cabin, I felt a familiar, protective instinct kick in. Janet was my responsibility. I couldn't save those men in Korea who died while I watched, helpless. But I could keep this young woman safe from whatever was coming. If only I had known then how unprepared we truly were. The next morning, we set out early to check the eastern quadrant. Fresh snow had fallen overnight, making the world quiet and clean. Too quiet. Look at these, I said, kneeling down to examine tracks in the snow. Human footprints. Janet came over to look. Hikers, this far out in winter? I shook my head. No backpack marks alongside, no walking stick prints, just boots. We followed. The tracks for about a quarter mile. That's when things got strange. Daniel, these don't look right anymore, Janet said, her voice tight. She was right. The footprints had changed. What started as normal boot prints were now longer, wider. The last few looked like massive animal tracks with clear claw marks at the front. 5 toes spread wide, pressing deep into the snow. Maybe 2 different. Trails crossed, she offered, but I could tell she didn't believe it. I stood up slowly, feeling the hair on the back of my neck rise. The forest around us had gone completely silent. No birds, no wind in the trees. Even the sound of snow falling from branches had stopped. When I breathed out, my breath cloud hung in the air longer than it should have. We need to keep moving, I said. About a mile later, we found the tree. A tall pine, standing alone in a small clearing. Its bark had been stripped away in a perfect spiral from bottom to top. The exposed wood underneath wasn't raw and light-colored like it should be. It was black, like it had been burned. But the tree was still alive. Is this some kind of disease? Janet asked, reaching toward it. I grabbed her hand. Don't touch, My mouth filled with a metallic taste like I'd been sucking on old pennies. The air around us suddenly stank of sulfur and something worse, like meat left too long in summer heat. The smell was so strong I could see it, little clouds of vapor hanging in the freezing air. "Let's head toward Blackfish Lake," I suggested. "There's an ice fishing shelter there. We can warm up." The shelter was a small wooden shack out on the frozen lake, used by locals. When we got there, the door had been torn clean off. Inside was worse. Blood was everywhere, splattered across the walls, frozen in dark pools on the floor. Worst of all was the pattern of it, like someone had fed. Janet turned away and got sick in the snow. My compass was going crazy, spinning in circles like we were standing on a magnet. We were nowhere near the iron ore deposits that sometimes messed with equipment. That's when we heard it, thunder. Not the low winter rumble of ice shifting on the lake, but full summer thunder, the kind that shakes your bones. In the middle of a snowstorm, and after it faded, children's laughter echoed from the empty forest. "We need to get back to the ranger station," Janet said, her face pale. "Call for help." I nodded, though I knew the radio wouldn't work. Not with what was out here. On our way back, we found the caribou. The carcass was stripped clean in parts, but not by normal predators. The meat had been cut away in careful, even portions. The bones had been arranged in a pattern on the snow, spelling out Ojibwe words I hadn't seen since my grandmother's teachings. Gawinagada wayanimi. Always hungry. The snow began to act strange as we hurried back. In spots, instead of falling down, it moved upward, swirling. In reverse blizzards that defied everything I knew about weather. The world was turning inside out around us. I glanced back at our trail and froze. Something was following us. The tracks behind us showed it clearly. Whatever it was had a stride length of at least 12 feet. Each footprint was pressed deep into the hard-packed snow, like it carried impossible weight. "Don't look back," I told Janet. "Just keep walking." But I knew it wouldn't matter how fast we walked. The hunger that walks on winter winds had found us. I saw it first through the trees. At first I thought it was just a dead pine, bone-white and skinny against the darkness. Then it moved. It was tall, maybe 15 feet, and so thin it shouldn't have been able to stand. Its skin was stretched tight over its bones, pale and see-through like ice that's just starting to form on a lake. You could see the yellowed bones underneath, like a skeleton wrapped in plastic. "Daniel," Janet whispered, her voice shaking. "What is that?" I pulled her behind a fallen tree, pressing a finger to my lips. The thing hadn't seen us yet. Its head turned slowly, scanning the forest. Its eyes were frozen solid, just white orbs, in sunken sockets, but somehow I knew they could see. They caught the light from the aurora overhead, reflecting it back like shards of ice. Then it opened its mouth. That mouth stretched wider than any human mouth could, revealing teeth like icicles and a tongue black as frostbite. When it breathed out, the air around it crystallized. Then it spoke. "Frostbane," it said, but not in its own voice. It was Tommy Chen's voice, a man who died next to me in that Korean prison camp. "The hunger hurts, doesn't it? Remember how we talked about food? Remember what we said we'd do for just one bite of bread?" I felt sick. Those were private words, spoken between dying men in our darkest moments. Things no one else could know. The Wendigo, because that's what it was, no matter what my Western education told me, began moving through the trees. It didn't walk, like a person or an animal. It moved like smoke drifting between the pines, getting closer without seeming to take steps. The snow around us began to whip into a frenzy. The creature was using the weather itself as a weapon, trying to separate us, to drive us away from shelter and safety. I reached for my gun, but as soon as I touched the metal, frost covered my fingers. The barrel was so cold it burned. When I tried to fire, the bullet shattered inside the chamber like it was made of glass. My knife wasn't any better. When I pulled it from its sheath, the blade looked brittle, covered in a layer of frost. As I watched, cracks spread across the steel like a frozen pond breaking up. "We need to run," I told Janet. "Head for the ranger cabin. Don't stop, don't look back." We ran, but it was like moving through a dream. The snow was suddenly waist-deep in places, the wind pushing against us like a wall. And all the while I could feel it, following just outside my field of vision, patient as the winter itself. Worse than the creature was what it put in our heads. Thoughts that weren't our own started creeping in. When Janet stumbled in the snow, I had a flash of thinking how much easier it would be to leave her behind, how her meat would keep me alive. If things got really bad, I shook my head hard, trying to clear those thoughts away. That wasn't me. It was the Wendigo getting inside our minds. The cold was getting worse, not normal cold. This was something else. Where my skin was exposed, it began to turn white with frostbite almost instantly. Janet's lips were turning blue, her movements getting slower. "I can't feel my feet," she said, her words slurring. "Just a little further," I lied. I had no idea how far we were from safety. The forest had become unfamiliar, transformed by the Wendigo's presence. When it attacked, it wasn't with claws or teeth. The air around us suddenly dropped so cold that the trees began to explode. The sap inside them froze and expanded so fast that the trunks split open with sounds like gunshots. The ground beneath, our feet cracked like thin ice. Everything within 100 yards of us flash froze. Birds dropped from the sky, solid as stones. The needles on the pine trees turned white with frost and began to fall like rain. Above us, the northern lights changed from green to blood red, casting everything in a glow like sunset on snow. Janet collapsed, her body shaking uncontrollably from the cold. I picked her up, feeling the weight of her despite my own exhaustion. The Wendigo wanted us to give up, to turn on each other, to become like it. Through the swirling snow, I could see it watching us, those frozen eyes reflecting the red light from above, waiting, patient, hungry. I knew then that we wouldn't make it back to the cabin. Our only chance was something else, something my grandmother had taught me long ago. A desperate plan began to form in my mind, dangerous and uncertain. But first, we had to survive the night. I knew there was a frozen lake nearby. Eagle Lake, the locals called it. The ice would be thick this time of year, but not everywhere. If I could lead the Wendigo out there, maybe the thin spots would trap it, at least for a while. "Janet, listen to me," I said, helping her to her feet. "We need to keep moving. There's a lake ahead. We're going to cross it." Her eyes were unfocused, her skin pale. "So cold, Daniel, so hungry." "I know, but we need to stay together." I pulled her along, watching her carefully. The Wendigo's influence was growing stronger. I could feel it. In my own mind, too, the gnawing emptiness that no normal food could fill. The wind howled around us, creating a complete whiteout. I could barely see 10 feet ahead. The ground beneath our feet had turned to pure ice, making each step a dangerous gamble. More than once, we both fell hard, sliding across the frozen surface. "Just leave me," Janet suddenly said, her voice different. Now, deeper, hollow. "You'll move faster alone, or you could eat. Meat keeps you warm, Daniel. You know that from Korea." I grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at me. "That's not you talking. Fight it, Janet." Her hand went to her belt, pulling out a small field knife. Her eyes weren't her own anymore. They reflected the same frozen light as the creature's. "So hungry," she whispered, but it wasn't her voice. I knocked the knife away, but she lunged at me with surprising strength, her fingers clawing at my face. "Give me your warmth," she screamed, the Wendigo speaking directly through her now. I had to get her under control without hurting her. I pinned her arms, wrapping her in my coat to restrain her movements. She fought like a wild animal, spitting and biting. Eventually her struggles weakened as exhaustion took over. Through the swirling snow, I spotted the dark shape of a cave entrance in the distance. Not ideal, but better than staying exposed. I carried Janet toward it, hoping it might offer some protection from the unnatural storm. The cave was worse than I could have imagined. As soon as we entered, the stench hit me, rot and decay and something worse. My flashlight revealed the Wendigo's larder. Bodies hung from the ceiling like frozen meat, some fresh, some ancient. Trappers, hikers, fishermen, anyone who had vanished in these woods over the years. Janet's eyes opened wide, suddenly clear again. "Oh God, Daniel, what is this place?" Before I could answer, ice crystals began forming across the cave entrance. The temperature dropped so fast I could hear my own clothing stiffening with frost. The Wendigo was here. It had to duck to enter the cave, its emaciated body folding, at impossible angles. Up close it was even more terrifying, a mockery of human form, stretched and twisted by endless hunger. I knew then that weapons wouldn't work, guns would freeze, knives would shatter, only the old ways might have a chance. My grandmother had taught me the ritual when I was young, though she never expected me to use it. "The Wendigo can be bound," she'd said, "but only by someone who understands its hunger without giving into it." I pushed Janet behind me into the deeper part of the cave. "Whatever happens," I told her, "don't interfere." I took out my pouch of sacred tobacco, the same one that had kept me sane in Korea. I began to sprinkle it in a circle around me, speaking the old Ojibwe words my grandmother had taught me. Words of binding, of containment, words that recognized the Wendigo's nature while refusing its power. The creature screamed, a sound like ice breaking on a frozen lake. It lunged toward me but stopped at the edge of the tobacco circle, not because it couldn't cross, but because the ritual had caught its attention. "I know your hunger," I told it, continuing the ritual. "I have felt it in the prison camps. I have carried it inside me for years. But I did not become you." The Wendigo's frozen eyes fixed on me. Its mouth opened wider than should be possible, revealing that black tongue and rows of icicle teeth. "You think you are different," it said, using the voices of dead men I had known. "But you would have eaten them in Korea if you had been stronger than them, just as you will eat her when the hunger grows too strong." Janet whimpered behind me. I didn't dare look back at her. I continued the ritual, my voice growing stronger. My grandmother had said the Wendigo could be bound to a place, trapped there until the binding broke or weakened. I needed to bind it to the lake where the spring thaw might weaken it. The Wendigo howled in rage as the ritual progressed. The cave began to shake, ice falling from the ceiling. The temperature dropped so low that my tears froze on my cheeks. "You cannot bind what is already inside you," the Wendigo hissed. "The hunger walks with you, Frostbane. It always has." With a sudden movement, it reached past the tobacco circle and grabbed Janet. She screamed as frostbite immediately blackened her skin where it touched her. I lunged forward, breaking the circle, breaking the ritual. I had to save her. Even knowing it was what the Wendigo wanted, I couldn't let it take her. We struggled toward the cave entrance, the creature following with that same patient, smoky movement. Outside, the blizzard had turned the world white. The lake was just ahead, but I couldn't see where the shore ended and the ice began. Janet was barely conscious now, the Wendigo's touch having drained her warmth. I half carried, half dragged her onto the lake ice, feeling it shift beneath our weight. The Wendigo followed, its massive form surprisingly light on the ice. It didn't break through where we struggled to stay upright. I completed the ritual there, on the frozen lake, speaking the final words as the Wendigo reached for us. The ice beneath its feet began to glow with an eerie blue light, the binding taking hold. With a sound like 1,000 trees shattering in winter, the ice broke, not beneath us, but in a perfect circle around the Wendigo. The creature howled as it plunged into the dark water, the ice immediately beginning to refreeze above it. The ritual had worked, but at a cost. Janet lay motionless in the snow, her body temperature dropping rapidly from the Wendigo's touch. I tried to warm her, to bring her back, but the damage was too severe. "Did we stop it?" she whispered, her last words barely audible over the now fading wind. "For now," I told her. "For this generation at least." She smiled faintly, then closed her eyes for the last time. The blizzard stopped as suddenly as it had begun. The northern lights faded back to their normal green, then disappeared entirely. But the cold, the unnatural bone-deep cold, remained. I carried Janet's body back to the ranger station, the radio mysteriously working again. I reported her death as exposure, a tragic accident during an unexpected storm. Who would believe the truth? In the spring, I returned to the lake. The ice had melted everywhere except for a perfect circle in the center, where it remained frozen despite the summer heat. The binding had held, but sometimes at night, when the winter wind blows hard across Superior National Forest, I can hear it calling from beneath the ice. Always hungry, always waiting. My grandmother warned me that such bindings don't last forever. One day, when another ranger finds strange tracks in the snow, or when children go missing near frozen lakes, I'll know. The hunger that walks on winter winds will have returned. My name is Vincent Thornfield. I've been a park ranger at North Cascades National Park for almost 8 years now. Before that, I was an Army ranger, but that's a life I try to forget. Some memories just don't fade away like you want them to. I came to these mountains looking for peace. There's something about being alone in the wilderness that helps quiet the noise in my head. Most days, I patrol the trails, help lost hikers, and keep an eye on the wildlife. But this assignment was different. The North Cascades are beautiful in a way that's hard to explain. Huge mountains with snow on top rise up all around you. The lakes here are so clear you can see straight to the bottom, with tall evergreen trees reflected perfectly on the surface. When the sun hits just right, it's like looking at a perfect painting. Yesterday, I hiked out to Shadow Valley, one of the most remote spots in the park. No tourists come this far out, just me and the wildlife. The sound of waterfalls echoed through the valley as I set up camp near the tree line. Above me, golden eagles circled on warm air currents floating between the jagged mountain peaks. For just a moment, I felt that peace I'm always chasing. The weight lifted from my shoulders. No memories of missions gone wrong, no faces of men I couldn't save. That's when I saw something that didn't make sense. A bald eagle, majestic and powerful, was soaring overhead when suddenly it shrieked and crashed straight into the cliff face. It was as if it had hit an invisible wall mid-flight. Its wings snapped and it fell to the ground, dead before it landed. I've never seen anything like it in all my years outdoors. As the sun started to set, the shadows on the mountains seemed to move in ways that didn't match the light. Then I noticed lights in the sky, like the northern lights. But that's impossible. This far south, they danced between the peaks, pulsing with colors that made my eyes hurt. I tried calling base camp on my radio, but got nothing but static. That's strange too. My equipment is top of the line and rarely fails. I checked my phone. No signal. I was completely cut off, at least 60 miles from the nearest town. That night, a black bear wandered into my campsite. I've dealt with bears before. They usually keep their distance if you make enough noise. But this one walked right up to my tent, sniffing curiously. Then something changed. The bear suddenly stood on its hind legs, eyes wide with what looked like pure terror. Then it ran away faster than I've ever seen a bear move. What could scare a full-grown black bear like that? Later, fog started rising from the valley floor, which was odd because the weather had been clear all day. The mist carried a strange smell, like wet animal fur mixed with the sharp scent of ozone and rotten eggs. It made my eyes water and my throat burn. While hiking the next morning, I found ancient rock paintings on a cliff wall. The local tribes have lived in these mountains for thousands of years, and they left their stories on the stone. But something wasn't right about these pictures. When I looked directly at them, they showed hunters chasing deer. But when I glanced at them from the corner of my eye, the figures seemed to move, telling different stories. Darker ones, with winged creatures descending from the sky to snatch people away. My head started pounding with a terrible pressure, like being underwater too deep. The temperature dropped 30 degrees in minutes, then shot back up again. The air felt wrong, heavy 1 minute, too thin the next. I've survived in deserts, jungles, and war zones, but something about this place made the hair on my neck stand up. I'm not a man who scares easily, but sitting here now, as night falls again over Shadow Valley, I can't shake the feeling that something is watching me. Something that doesn't belong in these mountains. Something that's hunting me, and I think it's getting closer. I wasn't supposed to be alone on this trip. The park sent me out here with Julia Manning, a wildlife photographer, working on a project for National Geographic. She's documenting endangered animals in the park. The wolves, mountain goats, and other creatures that might not be around much longer if we don't protect them. Julia is smart and tough, younger than me at 29, but she knows her way around the wilderness. This isn't her first time in rough country. I've worked with her before and I trust her. That's not something I say about many people these days. My hands shake sometimes when I'm tired, old injury from my army days. There are some missions I was on that the government says never happened, places I was never officially sent to. In one of those non-existent places in Central America, I got hurt badly. The nerve damage makes it hard to hold my coffee cup steady in the mornings. "You're doing that thing again, Vince," Julia said to me this morning as we packed up camp. "Scanning for threats? We're just taking pictures of goats, not infiltrating enemy territory." She was right. My eyes never stopped moving, checking sight lines, looking for anything out of place. It's a habit that kept me and my squad alive. Well, some of them anyway. I touched the dog tags hanging under my shirt. Not mine. They belong to men who didn't make it home. I wear them to remember. Some nights their faces come back in my dreams, asking why I made it out when they didn't. "Sorry," I told her. "Old habits." I didn't tell Julia about the strange things I'd seen yesterday. No need to worry her yet, but I kept my car-bar knife close. Park rangers aren't supposed to carry military knives, but that blade has saved my life more times than I can count. Rules are nice until you need to survive. "We should head up to Eagle Ridge today," Julia said, checking her camera gear. "I heard there's a family of mountain goats living near the peak. Would make for amazing shots with the valley as backdrop." I nodded, but something felt wrong about going higher up the mountain. The strange lights I'd seen were stronger in that direction. As we hiked, Julia stopped to take photos of a fox den we passed. I kept watch, one hand resting on my knife handle. The weather changed suddenly. Sunshine 1 minute, dark clouds the next. My back ached where the scars stretched across my skin. Old wounds always hurt when storms come. "You okay?" Julia asked, noticing my grimace. "Just the weather," I said. "When you've been beaten and cut like I have, your body becomes a pretty good forecast system." She gave me a sad smile. Julia knows parts of my story, more than most people. She knows I don't sleep much, that I wake up fighting invisible enemies, that sometimes loud noises send me diving for cover. "Vince," she said suddenly, her voice dropping to a whisper, "look at that." Up ahead on the trail was a set of tracks unlike anything I'd ever seen. They looked almost like bear prints, but much larger, with strange claw marks that dug deep into the soil. And they walked on 2 legs, not 4. "What made those?" Julia asked, already raising her camera. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But whatever it is, it's big." We followed the tracks for almost a mile. They led toward a rocky outcrop that overlooked the valley. As we got closer, the air felt heavier, like right before a big storm. My instincts were screaming at me to turn back. In the army, they trained me to spot danger before it becomes deadly. They taught me how animals behave when they hunt, how people move when they're planning an ambush. But something about these tracks felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. Like we weren't tracking an animal, but something that wanted us to follow. "Julia," I said quietly, "I think we should head back to camp." She looked at me with surprise. "But we just got started. The light is perfect for—" "Please," I cut her off. "Something's not right here. Trust me." The look in my eyes must have convinced her. Julia nodded slowly and put her camera away. As we turned to leave, a sound echoed across the valley, not quite a howl, not quite a scream. Something in between, something that made my blood run cold. Whatever made those tracks was out there, watching us, and I had the terrible feeling that it knew exactly who we were and what we were doing. I couldn't shake the thought that it was smarter than us, smarter than any predator I'd ever encountered. As we walked back down the trail, faster now, I kept my hand on my knife and my eyes on the tree line. There are things in this world that can't be explained, things that military training doesn't prepare you for, and I was starting to think we'd found one of them in these mountains. We made it back to our camp just as the sun was starting to set. Neither of us talked much on the way down. That strange sound still echoed in my head, and I could tell it bothered Julia too. "I'm going to check the perimeter," I told her as we reached our tents. "Old military habit. Always secure your position before dark." "I'll get dinner started," Julia said, trying to sound normal, but I could see the worry in her eyes. I walked in a wide circle around our camp, looking for anything unusual. About 50 yards out, I found something that made my stomach drop. There, in a patch of soft dirt, was an impression like nothing I'd ever seen before. It looked like something massive had landed there, something with wings spanning at least 20 feet across. The marks where claws had dug into the ground were so deep they cracked the rock underneath. I knelt down to look closer. Whatever made this wasn't a bird. The claw marks were all wrong, more like a bat's, but impossibly large. I've seen bear prints, mountain lion tracks, every kind of wildlife in these mountains. This was something else entirely. As I stood up, I noticed something strange. The forest had gone completely silent. No birds chirping, no insects buzzing. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. The silence was so thick I could barely hear my own heartbeat. I hurried back to camp, hand on my knife. When I got there, Julia was stirring a pot of beans over our small stove. "Find anything?" she asked. I hesitated. No need to scare her without good reason. "Just checking things out," I said. "After dinner, I think we should move camp, find somewhere more sheltered." As we ate, I kept looking at the tree line. The feeling of being watched was stronger now. Julia must have felt it too. She kept glancing over her shoulder. "Vince," she said suddenly, "what's that on those trees?" I followed her gaze. About 30 feet away, a stand of Douglas firs had strange marks on them. We walked over to look. The bark had been stripped off in perfect spiral patterns, all the way up as high as we could see. The exposed wood underneath was deeply scarred by something sharp. "Could a bear do this?" Julia asked, her voice shaking slightly. I shook my head. "Bears don't climb this high, and they don't make patterns. Whatever did this had to reach at least 30 feet up." A metallic taste filled my mouth suddenly, like blood. The air changed too, carrying that same musky animal smell I'd noticed with the fog. It was stronger now, almost visible as vapor trails in the cold mountain air. "Pack up," I said quietly. "We're moving now." We worked quickly, stuffing our gear into our packs. The sun had fully set, but a strange glow lit the sky. Those same aurora-like lights I'd seen the night before, dancing between the mountain peaks. We hiked for about an hour, using our headlamps to light the way. I was looking for somewhere more defensible to set up camp. As we rounded a bend in the trail, Julia suddenly grabbed my arm. "Vince, look!" Ahead of us was another campsite, not ours. 2 tents were set up in a small clearing, but something was very wrong. The tents were shredded, ripped open from above. Sleeping bags and gear were scattered everywhere, as if they'd been lifted high into the air and then dropped. I signaled for Julia to stay back as I approached carefully. There was no blood, no signs of bodies, just abandoned equipment. A half-eaten meal sat on a portable table, now covered in ants. Whoever had been here had left in a hurry, or been taken. "Hello?" I called out. "Park ranger. Anyone here?" Nothing but the echo of my own voice. I checked my GPS to mark the location so we could report it when we got back to headquarters. The screen showed impossible coordinates, numbers that made no sense. When I pulled out my compass, the needle spun wildly before pointing steadily toward a specific mountain peak, not north, but toward whatever was causing those strange lights. "We need to call this in," Julia said, her professional calm starting to crack. She tried her satellite phone, but like my radio, it was dead. That's when we heard it, the impossible sound echoing from the mountains around us. It was like wail, song, deep and haunting, but coming from the peaks above us. The sound seemed to answer itself, harmonizing across the valley in a way that made the hair on my arm stand up. "What is that?" Julia whispered. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But we need to keep moving." As we continued along the trail, the fog rolled in again, forming strange columns that moved on their own, ignoring the wind. It was like walking through a maze where the walls kept changing. We'd gone about another half-mile when I spotted something high in a tree beside the trail. At first, I thought it was just a branch, but when I shined my light on it, I realized it was a mountain goat carcass, somehow wedged 30 feet up in the branches. Its organs were missing, and the body was positioned in a way that looked deliberate, like some kind of offering. Julia turned away, fighting back nausea. I didn't blame her. We found a small cave to shelter in for the night, just big enough for our sleeping bags. I uncoiled our climbing rope to secure the entrance, but stopped when I noticed something strange. The rope had marks on it, testing marks, like something had been checking how much weight it could hold. The frayed spots showed grip strength far beyond any human. "Julia," I said quietly as we settled in, "I need you to stay close to me at all times. Whatever's out there, it's hunting us." She nodded, her face pale in the dim light of our lamp. "What do you think it is?" I thought about the wing impressions, the claw marks, the impossible reach, the strange sounds. "I don't know," I said, "but I've been trained to deal with threats. We'll make it out of here." As I said it, I wasn't sure if I believed my own words. In all my years in the military and as a ranger, I'd never encountered anything like this. The creature stalking us seemed to know the terrain better than we did. It was patient, intelligent, and it was getting closer. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the mouth of our small cave, knife in hand, watching the darkness. Julia dozed fitfully behind me, whimpering sometimes in her sleep. The strange lights in the sky grew brighter as the night went on, casting weird shadows that seemed to move on their own. Around 3 a.m. I saw it for the first time. A massive shape moved across the stars, blotting them out as it passed. It was huge, at least 12 feet tall, with wings that stretched wider than a car is long. The silhouette looked almost human in shape, but wrong somehow. The proportions weren't right, and the head moved in jerky motions like an owl, turning almost completely around as it scanned the valley below. I held my breath, pressing back against the cave wall, praying it hadn't seen us. As it turned, I caught a glimpse of its eyes, glowing amber in the darkness, like a cat's eyes, but much larger. Those eyes seemed to look right through me, filled with an intelligence that made my blood run cold. Just as suddenly as it appeared, the thing moved on, gliding silently over the treetops. I waited until I was sure it was gone before letting myself breathe again. When morning came, I gently shook Julia awake. Her face was pale with dark circles under her eyes. "We need to move," I told her. "Head back to Ranger Station. It's about 2 days' hike from here if we push hard." She nodded, gathering her things quickly. "Did you see something last night?" she asked. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but we'll talk about it while we walk." We set out as soon as there was enough light to see the trail. As we hiked, I told Julia about what I'd seen, the massive winged shape, the glowing eyes. She listened without interrupting, her face growing more serious with each word. "I believe you," she said when I finished. "I've heard stories from some of the tribal elders in the area about a creature in these mountains. They call it different names, but the descriptions match what you saw." We walked faster after that, pushing hard down the trail. Around midday, we stopped for a quick break near a stream. While Julia filled our water bottles, I checked our surroundings, that constant scanning I couldn't turn off. That's when I heard it. "Vincent, help me, help!" Julia's voice calling desperately from up the trail, the direction we'd just come from. I spun around, reaching for my knife, but Julia was right there at the stream, looking up at me with confusion. "Did you say something?" I asked, my voice tight. She shook her head slowly. "No." The voice came again, her voice perfectly matched down to the slight Texas accent she tries to hide. "Vincent, it's got me. Please!" Julia's eyes widened with fear as she heard her own voice calling from the forest. She scrambled to her feet, moving closer to me. "What is that?" she whispered. "It's mimicking you," I said, my mind racing through possibilities. "It's trying to separate us." We pressed on, moving as quickly and quietly as possible. The thing called out several more times, using both our voices now. Sometimes it sounded like Julia was right behind us, sometimes like I was calling from far ahead. The perfect mimicry was unnerving. It had every inflection, every quirk of our speech patterns down perfectly. As evening approached, dark clouds rolled in, bringing with them an unnatural storm. Lightning flashed between the peaks, but the thunder seemed delayed and distorted, like it was coming from underwater. We needed to find shelter soon. "There's an old fire lookout about half a mile ahead," I told Julia. "We can hole up there for the night." The wooden lookout tower stood on a ridge, giving a clear view of the valley in all directions. It wasn't much, but the walls would provide better protection than another cave or our tents. We had just reached the base of the tower when I saw it again, this time much closer. The creature stood at the edge of the clearing, half hidden by trees. In the fading light, I could see it clearly now. It had the overall shape of a man, but much larger, with powerful muscles bulging under dark, leathery skin. Massive, bat-like. Wings folded against its back, and its face was a horrible mix of bat and ape features, with a flattened nose and a mouth full of sharp teeth. But the worst part was its hands, almost human-looking except for the razor-sharp talons that extended from each finger. Those amber eyes fixed on us, tracking our movements with predatory focus. Its head swiveled unnaturally, turning nearly 180 degrees as it watched us. "Don't run," I whispered to Julia. "Get to the tower, now!" We backed away slowly, then turned and sprinted for the lookout. I pushed Julia ahead of me, keeping myself between her and the creature. We made it inside, and I slammed the door shut, jamming a chair under the handle. "Get upstairs," I told her, pulling out my service pistol. I'd avoided using it so far. Gunshots carry in these mountains, and I didn't want to attract attention. But we were out of options now. Julia climbed the ladder to the observation level while I kept watch through a small window. The creature hadn't moved. It just stood there, watching the tower with those intelligent eyes. Then it smiled, a human smile on that inhuman face. I aimed my gun and fired twice. The bullets should have hit it dead center, but they seemed to pass right through, as if the creature wasn't fully there. It flickered slightly, like a bad TV signal, then solidified. Again, it took a step forward, then another. Each movement was smooth, calculated. This wasn't a wild animal. It was hunting us with purpose and planning. I fired again, emptying my magazine. No effect. Upstairs, Julia screamed. I turned and raced up the ladder. What I saw made no sense. The creature was somehow inside the tower with us, even though I'd just seen it outside. No, not one creature. There were 3 of them now, identical copies surrounding Julia as she pressed herself against the wall. But when I blinked, there was only one again. It was playing with us, creating illusions. A deep, subsonic rumble filled the air, so low I felt it more than heard it. The sound burrowed into my head, triggering memories I'd fought to forget. Gunfire, screams, the faces of my dead squad members. My vision blurred as panic clawed at my throat. No, not now. I couldn't afford a flashback, not when Julia's life depended on me. I gripped my knife tightly, forcing myself back to the present. The creature watched me struggle, and I swear it looked amused. "What do you want?" I shouted at it. It didn't answer in words. Instead, it reached one clawed hand toward Julia, who was frozen in terror. I lunged forward, slashing with my knife. The blade connected this time, drawing a dark fluid that hissed. When it hit the wooden floor, the creature shrieked, a sound like metal tearing, and backed away. It looked at its wound, then at me, with what seemed like surprise. For a moment, we stood frozen in a strange tableau, the creature, Julia, and me. Then it did something I'll never forget. It spoke, using my voice, my exact tone. "You can't save her, Vincent. You couldn't save your squad, and you can't save her." With that, it turned and crashed through the window, wings unfurling as it soared into the storm. Julia collapsed, shaking uncontrollably. I wasn't much better, my hands trembling as I checked her for injuries. "What was that thing?" she whispered. "I don't know," I said, "but it's smart, too smart, and it's using everything it learns about us against us." Outside, the storm intensified. Lightning revealed glimpses of a dark shape circling the tower. Waiting, I knew it wouldn't wait forever. It was patient, but it was hungry too. And somehow, it knew exactly what I feared most. We spent a terrified night in that lookout tower. The creature circled for hours, sometimes landing on the roof with a heavy thud that made the whole structure shake. Sometimes it would call out in our voices, having conversations with itself that sounded so real, I had to keep checking that Julia was still beside me. By dawn, it seemed to have gone. The strange storm had passed too, leaving behind a sky that glowed with those unnatural lights even in daylight. "We can't stay here," I told Julia as we gathered our things. "It's going to come back, and I don't think this tower will keep it out next time." She nodded, her face determined despite the fear in her eyes. "What's the plan?" I thought about everything I'd seen, how the creature moved, how it hunted, what had actually hurt it. My knife had drawn blood when bullets passed right through. That meant it could be injured, which meant it could be killed. "We need to get to Razor Ridge," I said. "It's a narrow path along the mountain that leads down to the valley. The creature's wingspan is its advantage in open spaces, but in a tight spot like that, it becomes a weakness," Julia finished, understanding my thinking. We left the tower cautiously, eyes scanning the sky and trees. The hike to Razor Ridge would take most of the day, through increasingly difficult terrain. As we climbed higher, the air grew thinner and colder. The strange aurora lights seemed stronger up here, rippling across the sky in waves of green and purple. "Vincent," Julia said quietly as we paused for water. "What that thing said last night about your squad." I shook my head. It was in my head somehow, reading my memories, my fears. "You never talk about what happened to them." I took a deep breath. Maybe it was the thin mountain air, or the fact that we might not make it out alive, but suddenly I wanted her to know. It was a mission in Central America. We were sent to extract a prisoner from a compound. Intelligence said it would be lightly guarded. They were wrong. I paused, the memories flooding back. We were ambushed. My men died one by one while I listened on the radio. I was point man, ahead of the group. I survived because I wasn't with them when it happened. Julia put her hand on my arm. It wasn't your fault. That's what they tell me, I said. But I was their leader. They trusted me. We walked in silence after that, pushing higher into the mountains. Around midday, we reached the approach to Razor Ridge, a narrow spine of rock that extended out from the mountain face. On either side, sheer drops fell away thousands of feet to the valley below. The wind was fierce up here, trying to push us off the edge. The sky above churned with those strange lights, brighter than ever. "Vincent!" Julia suddenly grabbed my arm, pointing. "Look!" There it was, soaring between the peaks, heading straight for us. The bat squatch, its massive wings spread wide as it rode the air currents. It had seen us. "Run!" I shouted. "Get to the narrowest part of the ridge." We sprinted along the rocky spine, loose stones skittering, away under our feet and plummeting into the abyss below. The path narrowed until it was barely 3 feet wide, just enough for us to move in single file. The creature screeched as it approached, the sound echoing off the mountains. It circled. Overhead, those intelligent eyes studying the situation. It could see our plan. The narrow ridge would make it difficult for it to use its wings effectively. "It's working," Julia called back to me. "It can't get to us here." But the creature was smarter than we thought. Instead of trying to attack us on the ridge, it landed on the mountain face above, clinging to the rock with its claws. From there, it began to cause rock slides, sending boulders tumbling down toward us. We pressed ourselves against the cliff face as rocks crashed past. One caught Julia's backpack, nearly pulling her off the edge. I grabbed her arm just in time, hauling her back to safety. "We need to keep moving," I shouted over the wind. "There's a wider area ahead where we can defend ourselves better." As we inched forward, the creature tried a new tactic. It began to mimic Julia's voice again, this time so perfectly that I couldn't tell the difference. "Vincent, help! I'm slipping!" I turned to check on her, but she was right behind me, shaking her head to let me know it wasn't her who called. The voice came again, this time from farther back on the trail. "Vincent, I fell. I'm hanging on the edge." Julia gripped my sleeve. "Don't listen to it. I'm right here." But the cries grew more desperate, more convincing. Despite knowing it was a trick, part of me wanted to go back and check. The creature was using my protective instincts against me. We had nearly reached the wider section of the ridge when disaster struck. The entire path ahead of us collapsed in a carefully triggered rockslide. The creature had cut off our escape route. We were trapped on the narrowest section of Razor Ridge, with sheer drops on both sides and the bat squatch closing in. "What do we do?" Julia asked, her voice steady despite everything. I reached into my pack and pulled out something I hadn't told her about, a small package of C4 explosive. Another souvenir from my military days that I wasn't supposed to have, but had kept for emergencies. "When I give the signal," I said quietly, "I want you to run back the way we came. Get as far along the ridge as you can." "What about you?" "I'm going to create a distraction." She shook her head. "I'm not leaving." "You, Julia," I said firmly, "trust me, please." Something in my eyes must have convinced her. She nodded reluctantly. The creature was moving closer now, crawling along the cliff face like a massive spider. Its wings were folded against its back, talons digging into the rock for purchase. Those amber eyes never left us, calculating, planning. I set the explosive charge on the ridge where we stood. Using the last of the climbing rope to secure it, the creature watched with curious eyes, not understanding what I was doing. "Now, Julia!" I shouted. "Run!" She hesitated for just a second, then turned and sprinted back along the narrow path. The creature immediately shifted its attention to her, thinking she was the easier prey. It leaped from the cliff face onto the ridge, blocking my path to follow her. Standing there face to face with it, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The thing was massive up close, at least 12 feet tall, with muscles rippling under its leathery skin. Those intelligent eyes studied me, and its mouth twisted into that horrible, human-like smile. "You can't save her," it said in my voice, "just like you couldn't save them." I looked past it to where Julia was making her way safely along the ridge. "You're wrong," I said. "I can save her, and maybe make up for the ones I couldn't save before." I held up the detonator so the creature could see it. For the first time, I saw confusion in those amber eyes. It didn't understand the small device in my hand. "This is for my squad," I said and pressed the button. The explosion was deafening in the thin mountain air. The ridge collapsed beneath our feet, taking both me and the creature with it. As we fell, I saw the aurora lights above us flare brighter, as if responding to the creature's screams. I closed my eyes, feeling the rush of air around me. Strange, but I felt at peace. I'd completed my mission. Julia was safe. Then everything went black. My name is Marcus Coleman. I'm a park ranger in Chattahoochee National Forest, though I used to be a detective back in Atlanta. That was before everything fell apart. My marriage, my family, almost my whole life. But that's a story for another time. This morning, I'm standing at the edge of our campsite, watching the fog roll between the pine trees. White dogwood flowers stand out against the dark forest like little ghosts. It's quiet and peaceful for now. For just a moment, I feel something close to calm. The sound of the mountain streams mixing with bird songs reminds me of camping trips with my dad when I was a kid, back before he started drinking too much, back when things made sense. "Dad, you okay?" I turned to see my son Kevin coming out of our tent. He's 14 now, all awkward limbs and attitude. The judge ordered this weekend camping trip, thinking it might fix things between us. 3 days in the woods to make up for years of me not being there. Fat chance. "Yeah, just checking the perimeter," I say, falling back on cop talk without thinking. "Beautiful morning." Kevin just nods, his eyes on the ground. He looks so much like his mother it hurts to look at him sometimes. Something catches my eye. In the sky above us, a red-tailed hawk suddenly drops from the air like a stone. It's not diving for prey. Something's wrong. Blood is streaming from its eyes and beak as it falls, hitting the ground with a sickening thud just a few yards from us. "What the?" I step between the dead bird and my son without thinking. As the morning light filters through the trees, I notice something I missed before, strange red stains on the tree bark around our camp. It's too bright and fresh to be tree sap. It almost seems to be glowing. My radio crackles to life on its own. Static bursts through the speaker, but within the noise, I hear what sounds like whispers, lots of voices speaking together in perfect time. The sound makes the hair on my arms stand up. "Dad!" Kevin's voice has gone high with fear. "What's wrong with those animals?" I turn to see a family of raccoons walking straight toward our camp. They're moving wrong, too bold, too purposeful. Their eyes seem too smart, watching us like they're thinking about something. Then, as we stare in shock, all 4 animals collapse. At the same time, blood pours from their mouths in identical streams. The fog gets thicker, rolling in from the valley even though the weather report promised clear skies. It carries a metal smell like fresh blood mixed with wet dog. The air gets 20 degrees hotter in minutes, making it hard to breathe. "Pack up," I order, my old cop instincts screaming danger. "We're moving camp." While Kevin hurries to grab our stuff, I check out some old Cherokee trail markers carved into nearby trees. Fresh claw marks cut across the bark, like something tried to scratch out the old symbols. Whatever made those marks had fingers like a person, but claws like no animal I've ever seen. A crushing pressure builds in my head, causing a spike of pain behind my eyes. Something is out there in the forest, something that doesn't want us to leave. I feel my hand drift toward my ankle, where my service revolver is hidden. 12 years chasing killers through Atlanta taught me to trust my instincts. And right now, every instinct I have is telling me we're being hunted. My finger keeps twitching as I scan the trees. It's an old habit from my detective days when I had to be ready to pull my gun at any moment. The forest has gone completely quiet, and that's never a good sign. When the birds stop singing, it means something scary is nearby. I touch the spot on my ribs where a bullet once hit me during a drug bust that went bad. My partner Tompkins died that night. He covered me so I could get away, and I never got to thank him. That scar is just one of many reminders of people I couldn't save. I can feel my gun pressing against my ankle, hidden under my pant leg. Park rangers aren't supposed to carry weapons when off duty, but old habits die hard. My .357 Magnum has kept me alive more times than I can count. "You're doing that thing again," Kevin says quietly as we walk along the trail, trying to get far away from our old campsite. "What thing?" I ask, though I already know what he means. "That cop thing, where you look at everything like it's about to explode." I try to relax my shoulders. The wedding ring hanging from the chain around my neck feels heavy against my chest. 5 years since the divorce, and I still wear it this way. Helen was right. I always put my job before my family. Now I barely know my own son. "Sorry," I mumble. Force of habit. Kevin's eyes, so much like his mother's, look at me with a mix of curiosity and anger. "Mom says you see bad guys everywhere because of what happened to your partner." I wince. Helen had no right telling him about that. "Your mom talks too much. She says you couldn't save him, and that's why you couldn't save our family either." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stopped walking and turned to face my son. My gray hair came early, mostly after I missed Kevin's 10th birthday because of a triple murder case. Just one more time I wasn't there when my family needed me. But what can I say? That his mother is right? That I failed at everything that mattered? A howl cuts through the forest, stopping whatever lame excuse I was about to make. The sound is strange, too complicated, like many voices howling together in perfect time. "That wasn't a wolf," Kevin says, trying to sound brave, but his voice shakes. "No," I agree, "it wasn't. I know how criminals think. I can predict what desperate people will do in tough spots. But whatever made that sound follows rules I don't understand. Every protective instinct in me flares up, the same feelings that ruined my marriage because I couldn't stop bringing the darkness of my job home with me. Every case with hurt children, every broken family I've seen, it all boils down to one simple thought: keep my boy safe." I reach down and pull my gun from my ankle holster. "Dad," Kevin's eyes go wide when he sees the weapon. "Stay close," I tell him, checking that the gun is loaded. "And if I tell you to run, you run. Don't look back, don't stop. Head straight east until you hit the ranger station. Got it?" He nods, suddenly looking much younger than 14. I came to these mountains hoping this camping trip would fix things between me and my son. Now I realize we're in serious danger. Whatever is hunting us is smarter than any animal I've ever encountered, and maybe smarter than most humans too. The forest isn't a place of healing anymore. It's become a trap. As we keep walking, I notice Kevin watching me closely. "What?" I ask, maybe too sharply. "Nothing," he says. Then after a pause, "Dad, were you scared? When you were a cop, I mean." The question catches me off guard. All the time, I admit. Being scared keeps you alive. It's not feeling fear that's the problem. It's letting it control you. Are you scared now? I look at my son, really look at him. He deserves the truth. Yes, but we're going to be okay. Another lie. But sometimes lies are necessary. The trail narrows as we head deeper into the forest. Something about the path feels wrong, like it's changed since I studied the map this morning. We should be heading toward the ranger station, but the landmarks don't match up. "I think we're going the wrong way," Kevin says, confirming my suspicions. I pull out my compass. The needle spins wildly, never settling on north. "That's not possible unless something's messing with the equipment," I mutter, pocketing the useless compass. The fog is getting thicker, forming weird corridor-like shapes between the trees. The red stains on the bark seem to be getting brighter, almost glowing in the shadows. I stop to check our map, and my blood turns cold. There are fresh paw prints in the dirt behind us, following exactly in our footsteps. But they're not normal animal tracks. They're huge, with 5 toes that look almost human, but definitely aren't. Something has been following us this whole time, matching us step for step. "What is it?" Kevin asks, seeing my face. "We're being followed," I say simply. My son's eyes dart around the forest. "By what?" I wish I had an answer that wouldn't terrify him. "I don't know yet, but whatever it is, it's smart, and it's hunting us." The wind shifts, carrying a scent that makes my stomach turn. The metallic smell of fresh blood mixed with something musky and animal. It's closer now. "Stay behind me," I tell Kevin, raising my gun, "and be ready to run." We find them about an hour later, 5 dead goats arranged in a perfect star shape where 2 hiking trails meet. They must have been stolen from a farm nearby. What's really strange is there's no blood in them at all, but I can't find any cuts or wounds showing. How the blood was taken out. "Don't look," I tell Kevin, but he's already seen. His face goes white, making his freckles stand out. "What could do that?" he whispers. I have no answer. I've seen a lot of terrible things as a detective. Murders, gang killings, crime scenes that give normal people nightmares. But I've never seen animals arranged like this, with such careful planning. Nothing that could drain 5 animals without leaving a single mark. The forest has gone completely silent around us. No bugs buzzing, no birds chirping, not even the sound of wind in the leaves. The silence pushes against our ears like it's trying to crush us. "We need to call this in," I say, reaching for my radio. But when I press the talk button, instead of the normal ranger channel, I hear pieces of old emergency calls, missing person reports that sound like they're from decades ago, read in a voice that makes my skin crawl, my own voice. Repeat. Missing hiker last seen on Blood Mountain Trail. White male, mid-30s, carrying red backpack. I switch off the radio with a shaking hand. Kevin is staring at me, waiting for an explanation. "Bad reception," I lie. "We'll keep moving." We walk about 50 yards further, and I stop suddenly. Kevin bumps into me from behind. There's an oak tree right in our path with fresh carvings in the bark, symbols that look like police crime scene markings, but in a language I've never seen before. The cuts are so fresh that sap is still oozing out like blood from a wound. As we stand looking at the tree, my mouth fills with a copper taste and a strong smell like animal pee hits my nose. My brain tells me what this means. We've crossed into someone else's territory, or something else's. "Dad," Kevin tugs at my sleeve and points through the trees. There's a small clearing with an abandoned hunting camp, tent walls ripped open. From the outside, sleeping bags covered in what can only be dried blood. No bodies, no signs of fighting beyond the first attack, just emptiness and the feeling that we're being watched. The howling starts again, this time from many directions at once. The sounds move around us, making it hard to tell where they're coming from. It suggests coordination, intelligence way beyond what any normal animal should have. My police training tells me we're being surrounded, herded like prey. "Stay close," I tell Kevin, gripping my gun tighter. We push forward, trying to circle back toward the ranger station, but the trails seem to shift around us, taking us deeper into the wilderness instead of out. The fog gets thicker, forming maze-like hallways, while the red stains on trees start, glowing faintly as daylight fades. I stop to check our map, and my blood runs cold. The hiking trail behind us shows fresh paw prints in our exact footsteps, huge, five-toed prints that look almost human but aren't. The pack has been shadowing us from the beginning, matching us step for step. We're being hunted, I say simply, meeting my son's terrified eyes. As if to prove my point, we stumble upon a deer hanging from a tree branch. Its insides have been removed with careful precision, but the body has been positioned like it was. Crucified. I've seen enough ritual killings to know a message when I see one. Kevin throws up into the bushes. When he stands up straight again, tears have made clean lines through the dirt on his face. "We're going to die here, aren't we?" he asks. Before I can answer, we find something that removes any doubt about how much danger we're in. In a hollow, under a tree struck by lightning, there's a collection of personal items. Wallets, watches, wedding rings, carefully arranged by size and type, like trophies. Among them, shining in the fading light, is a park ranger badge. I can still read the name despite the bloodstains. Rodriguez. Rodriguez went missing 3 weeks ago, I whisper. Search teams found nothing. A branch snaps in. The forest behind us. Not by accident, I'm sure. It's a signal, a taunt. The fire tower, I decide, pointing to the map. 2 miles northeast. It's up high, made of metal. We can defend it better than being out in the open. Kevin nods, his face showing determination through his fear. In that moment, he looks like me, not his mother. "Can we make it?" he asks. "We have to," I reply, though I'm not sure if that's true. Behind us, something moves through the bushes with purpose. The hunt has truly begun. As we start moving toward the fire tower, Kevin stays close to my side. "Dad," he says quietly, "the stuff at that camp, it looked like the people were just taken." I nod. Looks that way. "But there's no bears in this part of Georgia that could do that, right? And wolves are too small." "Right," I say, not wanting to scare him more by guessing what might be. "Out there, Grandpa Joe used to tell stories," Kevin continues. "Mom's dad, I mean. About things in these mountains that weren't animals or people." This catches my attention. Helen's father was Cherokee, full of old stories I never paid much attention to. Now I wish I had listened more carefully. "What kind of things?" I ask. "I don't remember exactly. He called them blood brothers or blood drinkers or something. He said they could talk to each other without making sounds, and that they marked their hunting grounds with special symbols." A chill runs down my spine. The symbols on the trees, the bloodless animals, the way the pack moves together like they share one mind. "Did he say how to stop them?" I ask, trying to keep my voice calm. Kevin shakes his head. "I don't think so. He just said people who saw them never came back to tell about it." Great. Just great. The light is fading fast now, and I click on my flashlight. The beam seems weaker than it should be, barely cutting through the thickening fog. "Stay close to me," I tell Kevin. "Whatever happens, we stick together." As we push through the dense forest, I can't shake the feeling that we're being allowed to move toward the fire tower, that whatever is hunting us wants us to go there. But we have no choice. Night is coming, and we need shelter. I check my gun again. 5 bullets left. Not nearly enough if what's hunting us is what I'm starting to fear it might be. The howling starts again, closer this time, and now I can hear something else mixed in with it, something that sounds almost like words. Night falls quickly as we push toward the fire tower. The trail gets narrow, with thick bushes on both sides that seem to reach for us with their twisted branches. My cop instincts tell me we're being funneled into a trap, but we have no choice except to keep going. Forward. Kevin stumbles, clearly exhausted. "Dad, I can't." "You can," I cut him off, probably sounding harsher than I meant to. I soften my voice. "Just a little further. I promise." The lie tastes bitter, but necessary. If he panics now, we're both dead. We stop at a small stream to fill our water bottles. That's when I see them, multiple pairs of red eyes reflecting our flashlight beam from the darkness. They're arranged in a half circle, some higher than others, like they're standing, in some kind of order. The eyes blink at the exact same time, something no normal animals would do. "Don't move," I whisper to Kevin, raising my gun. The leader steps out of the shadows slowly, showing itself bit by bit. It stands about 4 feet tall at the shoulder, moving on legs that don't look right. Too many joints, too fluid. Its body is powerfully built, but what really scares me is the intelligence in those predatory eyes. This is no normal wolf. The creature has features from multiple animals mixed together in a nightmare combination. A wolf head on a body like a panther, ears like a bat that move independently, and most disturbing of all, hands like a monkey ending in curved claws, made for tearing flesh. Behind it, more creatures appear from the darkness, 7 of them, similar but smaller, arranged in a perfect formation that no wild animals could maintain. The creatures start making low growls that I can feel vibrating in my chest. The sounds overlap and build on each other until they almost form a language. The pack moves together perfectly, each member responding to commands I can't hear, like they're all parts of one mind, controlling many bodies. I fire a warning shot into the air. The creatures don't flinch or scatter like animals should. Instead, they adjust their positions with tactical precision, 2 members moving left, while others create a diversion by moving right. "Run!" I shout, firing directly at the leader. The bullet hits, but the creature barely stumbles. Black goo seeps from a wound that should have killed it instantly. We run through the forest, branches whipping our faces as we leave the trail and head straight for the fire tower we can now see on the ridge above us. My police training isn't helping against these predators. They seem to know what we're going to do before we do it, like they can read our thoughts. The creatures show behavior that makes no sense. Sometimes they stop and just watch us with curious eyes. Other times they explode into violence for no reason I can see. One moment they'll fall back, making us think we've gained some ground. Then they suddenly appear ahead of us on the trail, herding us like sheep. A strong, musky smell fills the air around us, triggering a fear response that makes Kevin's knees buckle. I drag him back to his feet. "Don't breathe deep," I tell him, though I know that's not very helpful advice. We burst into a small clearing and find ourselves surrounded. The pack has maneuvered us perfectly, using the forest itself as a weapon. Trees form natural corridors that have herded us exactly where the creatures wanted, while the bushes hid their movements. The leader steps forward, its unnatural shape outlined against the rising moon. When cornered, it lets out a howl that hits me like a physical blow, causing temporary blindness and dizziness. Kevin collapses beside me, hands over his ears, though the sound isn't something you hear with your ears. Through blurry vision, I see the creatures marking the clearing's edge with blood. Fresh blood drawn from their own bodies, applied to trees. In the same strange symbols we saw earlier, some kind of ritual, a claiming. "The tower," I gasp, grabbing Kevin's arm. "It's our only chance." Kevin's eyes are wide with fear, but he nods. The boy is handling this better than many grown men. I've seen face life-threatening situations. I feel a surge of pride through my fear. "When I fire, we run straight through that gap," I tell him, pointing to a narrow opening in the pack's formation. "Don't stop for anything, not even for me. Understand?" "Dad, no." "Promise me, Kevin." He swallows hard. "I promise." I aim carefully and fire my remaining bullets in quick succession, creating momentary chaos among the pack. We take our chance, charging. Through the gap and up the steep trail toward the fire tower, now visible through the trees. Behind us, the leader lets out another howl, this one filled with rage and something that sounds disturbingly like laughter. As we run, I can feel them, all around us, moving through the forest just out of sight. They're playing with us, I realize. This is some kind of game to them. Almost there, I pant, seeing the metal legs of the fire tower through the trees. Kevin is keeping pace beside me, his face set with determination despite his fear. "What are those things?" he gasps between breaths. "I don't know," I admit, "but they're smart. Too smart." Like in Grandpa's stories? Maybe. Right now I'm more concerned with staying alive than figuring out what they are. The tower looms ahead of us, a skeletal metal structure against the night sky. Just another 100 yards. Suddenly, one of the creatures darts across the path ahead of us. It stops and turns, looking directly at us. In the moonlight, I can see it clearly for the first time. The sight makes my blood run cold. Its face is wolf-like, but with an expression no animal should have, a kind of cruel intelligence. Its body is powerful but wrong somehow, like someone took parts from different predators and stitched them together. But it's the eyes that truly terrify me. They look almost human, filled with a calculating awareness. It tilts its head, studying us. Then it grins, showing rows of needle-sharp teeth. "Dad?" Kevin's voice shakes. "Keep moving," I say, pushing him forward. "Don't run, just walk steadily toward the tower." The creature watches us pass, making no move to attack. I can feel its eyes on my back as we continue up the path. More. Shapes move in the forest around us, pacing us, herding us. I realize with growing dread that they could have killed us many times already. They're leading us somewhere. The base of the tower is just ahead now. 50 yards, 40, 30. "We're going to make it," Kevin says, hope creeping into his voice. "That's when they attack. They come from all sides at once, moving so fast they're just blurs in the darkness." I push Kevin behind me, raising my gun, but I know I'm out of bullets. The leader stops just yards away, red eyes gleaming. It makes a sound, not a growl or a howl, but almost like speech. Then impossibly I understand what it's saying. Blood calls to blood. Kevin grabs my arm. "Dad, I heard that, in my head." "Run for the tower," I tell him, keeping my eyes on the leader. Now! We make a final dash for the metal stairs. I can feel hot breath on my neck as one of the creatures lunges for me. Pain explodes across my back as claws tear through my jacket. We hit the stairs running, metal clanging under our feet as we climb. The creatures follow, their claws scraping against the steel. But they seem hesitant, moving more slowly on the man-made structure. 4 flights up, we reach the observation platform. I slam the hatch shut behind us, but there's no lock. It won't hold them for long. "We made it," Kevin gasps, collapsing against the railing. I check my wounds. Painful, but not deep. I'll live for now. "Will help come?" Kevin asks, his voice small against the night sounds. I want to lie, to comfort him, but something in his eyes tells me that empty promises will only damage the fragile trust we've built. "I don't know," I admit. "But we're better off here than in the forest." The howling begins again, closer now. Through the darkness, I can make out shapes moving with purpose around the base of the tower. The pack is regrouping, planning their next move. "What are they?" Kevin whispers. I shake my head. "Nothing natural. Like Grandpa Joe's stories? The Blood Brothers." "Maybe," I say. "What else did he tell you about them?" "Just that they were old, older than people, and that they marked their territory with blood symbols." The metal tower suddenly shudders as something heavy hits its base. Below us, claws scrape against steel, testing for weaknesses. The hunt isn't over. I position myself at the top of the stairs, ready for whatever comes up. "Stay behind me," I tell Kevin. In the darkness below, I can see them climbing, their unnatural forms even more disturbing in the faint moonlight. The leader pauses on the landing below us, its red eyes fixed on me with terrible intelligence. It's testing me, I realize, using my son as bait to see how dangerous I am before deciding whether to kill quickly or drag out the hunt. As I stare back at those inhuman eyes, I understand something with perfect clarity. These aren't just animals. They're something ancient, something that has hunted these mountains long before humans named them. The Howling Brotherhood, guardians of Blood Mountain, awakened by our presence. And they're hungry. The fire tower sways slightly in the night. A wind, dark clouds roll in, covering the moon and stars. In the distance, lightning flashes, showing the forest below us for brief seconds, like frozen pictures in a nightmare. Almost safe, Kevin whispers, but we both know that's not true. The metal stairs clang as something heavy climbs them. I check my gun again, even though I know it's empty. Old habits. What do we do? Kevin asks, his voice surprisingly steady, despite everything. I look around the small platform for anything we can use as a weapon. There's an old fire extinguisher, some empty cans, and a broken chair. Not much to fight off monsters with. We need to block the stairway, I say, dragging the chair toward the opening in the floor where the stairs come up. Kevin helps me, and together we pile everything we can find on top of it. It won't hold them for long, but it might buy us some time. The first raindrops hit the metal roof with loud pings as the storm moves in. The wind picks up, making the whole tower creak and sway. I hope the old structure is as solid as it looks. Will anyone come looking for us? Kevin asks. I want to lie, to tell him help is on the way, but I can't. Not until we're officially missing. Tomorrow evening at the earliest, he nods, taking this in. So we have to survive the night. Yeah, I say, surprised by how grown up he sounds. We stick together, no matter what. Below us, the creatures are getting closer. I can hear their claws on the metal steps, the strange rumbling sounds they make to each other. They're coordinating, planning. Kevin moves closer to me. Dad, if we don't make it, we will. I cut him off. But if we don't, he continues, I want you to know I don't blame you. For the divorce and stuff, I know you were just doing your job. My throat tightens. Kevin, A loud bang interrupts us as something hits our makeshift barricade from below. The chair legs scrape across the floor as the barrier starts to give way. They're coming through, Kevin says, backing away from the opening. I grab the fire extinguisher, our only real weapon. Get behind me. The barricade suddenly bursts apart as the leader pushes through the opening onto our platform. In the flashes of lightning, I can see it clearly now. A nightmare creature that shouldn't exist. Its red eyes fix on me with clear intelligence. As it slowly advances. Behind it, more of the pack climb onto the platform. We're surrounded, backed against the railing with nowhere to run. The leader makes that strange sound again, and once more I understand the words in my head. Blood calls to blood. The mountain hungers. Kevin grips my arm. Dad, what does it want? I don't answer. I'm too busy trying to find a way out of this impossible situation. The drop behind us is at least 100 feet. We'd never survive. The fall. Fighting is useless against so many. We're trapped. Then I notice something. The creatures are moving cautiously on the metal platform, as if they don't like the feel of it under their feet. They prefer the forest floor, the natural world. This man-made structure confuses them, and they're keeping their distance from the metal railing. An idea forms in my mind, desperate, probably suicidal, but our only chance. Kevin, I say quietly, when I move, I want you to run down the stairs. Don't stop. Don't look back. Just run east toward the ranger station. What? No way. I'm not leaving you. You promised, I remind him. If I tell you to run, you run. The leader takes another step forward, its pack spreading out to block any escape. I need to create a diversion, something that will confuse them. Long enough for Kevin to get away. Lightning flashes closer now, followed immediately by booming thunder. The storm is right on top of us. That gives me an idea. Metal, I whisper to Kevin. They don't like metal. I look up at the lightning rod at the top of the tower, then down at the metal platform we're standing on. if lightning strikes the tower while they're on it. Get ready, I tell Kevin. When I say go, you run, and don't stop running until you reach help. Dad, please. I love you, son, I say, and I mean it more than I've ever meant anything in my life. Tell your mom I'm sorry I couldn't be what you both needed. Before he can argue, I pull the pin on the fire extinguisher and spray it directly at the leader's face. The creature howls in rage and confusion as the white chemical cloud blinds it temporarily. Go! I shout, charging forward with the extinguisher held in front of me like a battering ram. I slam into the leader, pushing it back toward its pack. The sudden attack creates just enough confusion for Kevin to slip past and reach the stairs. Run! I yell again as the creatures recover and surround me. I hear Kevin's footsteps on the metal stairs moving fast. He's getting away. That's all that matters. The leader shakes its head, clearing the chemical from its eyes. It looks at me with pure hatred now. The game is over. No more playing with their food. Come on then, I say, raising the empty extinguisher like a club. They attack all at once, a coordinated assault from multiple directions. I swing the extinguisher wildly, connecting with one creature's head with a satisfying thunk, but there are too many of them. Claws tear into my arms and back. Teeth snap inches from my face. I fight with everything I have, but I'm losing ground fast. Lightning flashes directly overhead, and for a split second, the world turns white. The creatures pause, confused by the light and the electricity in the air. In that moment of hesitation, I make my final move. I grab the leader by its thick fur and drag it toward the railing. It struggles, stronger than any human could be, but somehow I hold on. This is for my son, I growl as I push both of us against the metal railing. Lightning strikes the tower with a deafening crack. Electricity courses through the metal structure, through the railing, through me and the creature I'm holding. Pain, beyond anything I've ever felt, engulfs me. My muscles lock up, my vision goes white, and I smell burning hair and flesh. The last thing I hear is the leader's howl of pain, mixing with my own scream. Then darkness. My name is Rebecca Hartwell. I'm a park ranger in Monongahela National Forest, West Virginia. I'm 31 years old, though some days I feel much older. Before I came here, I was a nurse in Vietnam. That was another lifetime ago, or at least that's what I try to tell myself. This morning started like any other. I woke up before dawn, made a pot of coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in, and headed out for my usual patrol. There's something magical about these mountains in the early morning. The mist hangs between the peaks like ghostly fingers, and this time of year, the autumn leaves turn the whole forest blood red. I stood at my favorite lookout point, watching the mountains. They reminded me of sleeping giants wrapped in crimson blankets. Below me, I could hear the gentle sounds of the mountain stream as it tumbled over smooth limestone rocks. Somewhere in the distance, a barred owl called out, its voice echoing through the valleys. Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? For a moment, I felt calm. It was the same kind of peace I used to feel during the quiet moments between surgeries. In Da Nang, those rare, precious minutes when no one was dying under my hands. Then everything changed. A group of crows that had been sitting in a nearby tree suddenly took flight all at once, as if someone had fired a gun. Their angry cawing filled the air for a few seconds, and then nothing. The silence was so complete it made my ears ring. No birds, no insects, not even the sound of the wind in the trees. As the first light of dawn broke over the mountains, I noticed something strange about the frost on the leaves around me. The delicate white patterns looked like tiny bones. Femurs, ribs and skulls, all arranged in perfect symmetry. Too perfect to be random. I've seen frost patterns my whole life, but never anything like this. I decided to head down into the hollow to check things out. As I descended, my radio started to crackle with static. The interference got stronger the closer I got to the old Cherokee burial mounds that dot this part of the forest. I tried to call in my position, but all I got back was garbled noise. About halfway down the trail, a young white-tailed deer stepped out from behind a tree. Usually, they bolt at the first sign of humans, but this one walked right up to me, looking into my eyes with no fear at all. Then, without warning, it collapsed mid-step. I heard a sickening crack as its bones seemed to shift beneath its skin. Before I could reach the deer, a thick fog began rolling up from the valley floor, swallowing the trees and the trail ahead. There wasn't supposed to be fog today. The weather forecast had called for clear skies. The mist carried a smell that made my stomach turn. Like old graves and decaying flowers, I checked the trail markers carved into the trees to find my way. They looked freshly made, but somehow weathered at the same time, as if they'd been there for decades. I couldn't make sense of it. It was like time itself was confused in this place. Suddenly I felt a sharp pain in my head and a warm trickle from my nose. My hand came away with a smear of blood, a nosebleed. The barometric pressure must have dropped dramatically. The old shrapnel scars on my body began to ache with a phantom pain I hadn't felt in years. The tiny pieces of metal the surgeons couldn't remove from my last day in Vietnam were singing their old song. I should have turned back then. Every instinct told me to get out of that hollow, to climb back up to where the air was clear and the world made sense. But then I thought, what if someone was down there? What if someone needed help? I couldn't walk away. I never could. So I tightened the straps on my backpack, checked my radio one more time, still nothing but static, and whistled for Medic, my German shepherd, to stay close. Together, we headed deeper into the hollow, into the thickening fog that seemed to swallow every sound except the beating of my own heart and the soft padding of Medic's paws beside me. I didn't know it then, but we were walking into a nightmare that would make the horrors of Vietnam seem like a pleasant dream. Most people come to these mountains to find peace. I came here to hide. After Vietnam, I couldn't go back to normal life. How could I? I'd spent 2 years with my hands inside people's bodies, trying to put them back together while bombs fell around us. Some nights I still wake up thinking I'm back in that field hospital, the smell of blood and antiseptic filling my nose. I looked down at my hands as I walked through the fog. Even after all these years, they still had a yellowish tint from the iodine I used to scrub them with. In Vietnam, I'd wash my hands until they were raw, trying to get the blood out from under my fingernails. Some stains never really go away. Medic nudged my leg, bringing me back to the present. He always knows when I'm slipping into the past. That's why I named him Medic. He saves me every day. Good boy, I whispered, running. My hand over his fur. I got him from a rescue shelter 3 years ago. He was already trained to help people with problems like mine. When I start breathing fast or my hands shake, he presses his body against my legs before the flashbacks can take hold. He's better than any medicine the VA doctors tried to give me. The scar on my face itched, like it always does when I'm nervous. It runs from my left ear to the corner of my mouth, a souvenir from a mortar attack in Da Nang. The doctors did their best, but it healed into a permanent half-grimace. People in town think I'm unfriendly because of it. Maybe that's why I prefer the company of trees and animals. I reached into my pocket and felt the smooth wooden beads of the rosary I always carry. A dying Marine pressed it into my hand after I couldn't save him. "Keep it, Angel," he'd said. "You'll need it more than me." I'm not even Catholic, but I've held on to it ever since. The beads are worn smooth from my fingers, running over them whenever the memories get too loud. The fog was getting thicker. I checked my watch, 7:15 a.m. I should have been able to see the sun by now, but the light around me was grey and diffuse, like being inside a cloud. I straightened my uniform jacket, making sure the creases were perfect. Old habits. In Vietnam, I learned that when everything is chaos, controlling small things helps keep you sane. Clean uniform, organized med kit, everything in its place. Speaking of med kits, I patted the side pocket of my backpack where I keep my special supplies. Against regulations, I still carry military-issue morphine syrettes. In Vietnam, having them ready could mean the difference between a soldier living or dying. Out here in the wilderness, the same might be true for a hiker with a broken leg miles from help. I've treated everything from snake bites to bear attacks in these mountains. When you're the only thing standing between someone and death, you learn to be prepared. Maybe that's why I can't turn away from trouble, even when every cell in my body is screaming danger. It's the guilt, I guess. For every soldier I saved, there were 3 more I couldn't. Their faces visit me at night, asking why I didn't try. Harder, work faster, do more. So I keep trying to balance the scales, one rescue at a time. The hollow was getting darker the further I walked, even though morning should have been brightening everything by now. I switched on my flashlight, but its beam barely cut through the thick fog. "Something's wrong here, medic," I said quietly. He whined in response, his ears flat against his head. He felt it too. I should have turned back. Every bit of training and experience told me to get out of there. But what if someone was lost in this fog? What if they needed help? I couldn't live with another person's death on my conscience. So I kept walking, even as the temperature dropped and the fog closed in around us. That's when I saw the first sign that this wasn't just strange weather or my imagination playing tricks. About 20 feet off the trail, something white gleamed in my flashlight beam. I moved closer. Medic pressed against my leg. It was a pile of animal bones, squirrels, rabbits, maybe a fox, all arranged in a perfect circle. The bones were bleached white, like they'd been there for years, but I could see bits of fresh tissue still clinging to some of them. My medical training kicked in. Animals don't die like this. They don't arrange their skeletons in geometric patterns. Someone or something had placed them there, and suddenly I realized what was missing. Sound. No wind in the trees, no insects buzzing, no birds calling. Nothing but the sound of my own breathing and heartbeat. We were alone in the hollow, or at least I hoped we were. I backed away from the bone circle, my flashlight beam shaking slightly. Medic growled low in his throat, the fur on his back standing up. "Easy, boy," I whispered, though my own nerves were frayed. Poachers sometimes did strange things, and there were always stories of cult activity in these remote hollows. I tried to think logically. There had to be a normal explanation. I continued down the trail, keeping my eyes sharp for any sign of human activity. The forest around me had changed somehow. The trees seemed taller, closer together, their branches reaching toward each other like fingers trying to touch. About a quarter-mile further, I spotted something that stopped me in my tracks. An old oak tree stood by the path, but something was wrong with it. All the bark had been stripped away, revealing bone-white wood underneath. But that wasn't the strangest part. The exposed wood had been carved with symbols, circles, lines, and curves that looked disturbingly like the anatomical drawings in my old medical textbooks. I reached out to touch one of the carvings, then pulled my hand back. A metallic taste filled my mouth like I'd been sucking on pennies. The air around the tree smelled sharp and clinical, like formaldehyde. My eyes began to water. "This isn't right," I said to Medic, who was now pressing hard against my legs, urging me to turn back. I tried my radio again. Nothing but static, but within the white noise, I thought I heard voices. I turned up the volume. "Multiple casualties. Need immediate evac." The words were broken up by static, but they sent a chill down my spine. It sounded like military chatter, like what I used to hear in Vietnam. And worse, it sounded like my own voice calling in casualty reports. I switched off the radio, my hands trembling now. Just interference, I told myself, old frequencies crossing over. I'd gone maybe another 100 yards when I saw the hunter's cabin through the trees. I knew this place. Old man Jenkins built it 30 years ago. He died last winter and no one had used the cabin since, but the door was standing wide open. "Hello?" I called out. "Anyone there, park ranger?" No answer. Just that same dead silence. Against my better judgment, I approached the cabin. The fog swirled around it, almost like it was alive, trying to both hide and reveal what waited inside. Medic whined and pulled at my pant leg, trying to stop me. But I had to check. What if someone was hurt? The floorboards creaked under my boots as I stepped through the doorway, Medic reluctantly following. My flashlight beam cut through the gloom inside. What I saw made me freeze. Human bones lay scattered across the cabin floor. A femur here, several ribs there, part of a skull in the corner. But they weren't just thrown around. They were arranged in a pattern, a perfect spiral that started in the center of the room and worked its way outward. In the middle was a complete human hand, the bones articulated as if still held together by invisible tendons. My first thought was that I'd stumbled onto a crime scene, but something about the arrangement was too precise, too intentional. This wasn't the work of a murderer trying to hide evidence. This was something else. I backed toward the door, and that's when my radio crackled to life again by itself. Through the static, I heard it clearly this time. "Nurse Hartwell to triage. Multiple incoming wounded. Nurse Hartwell report immediately." It was the exact announcement they used to make at the field hospital in Da Nang, word for word, in my voice. I stumbled out of the cabin, heart pounding. The fog had grown even thicker, but now it seemed to move with purpose, swirling around me like curious fingers. And then I heard it, a low, bone-deep moaning that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It wasn't a single voice, but many, all moaning in perfect harmony like some terrible choir. Medic barked sharply, facing into the trees. I followed his gaze and saw movement. About 20 feet away was a deer, or what had once been a deer. Its skin had become transparent, like cloudy glass, revealing the skeleton underneath. But the bones weren't still. They were moving, shifting inside the translucent flesh as if trying to rearrange themselves. I stumbled backward, nearly falling. This wasn't possible. Nothing about this was possible. I turned to run back the way I came, but the path had vanished. Where there should have been a clear trail, there was now just more forest. Bone-white trees arranged in neat rows, like the beds in a hospital ward. I spun around, looking for any familiar landmark, but everything had changed. The fog had become so thick I could barely see 10 feet in any direction. The temperature had dropped dramatically. I could see my breath now, little clouds of white that the fog eagerly swallowed. "We need to get out of here," I told Medic, trying to keep my voice steady. I pulled out my compass. The needle spun wildly, around and around, never settling on a direction. My watch had stopped at 7:15, the exact time I'd checked it earlier. I was lost, completely lost in woods I'd known for years. And somewhere in the fog, that moaning grew. Louder, closer. It sounded like pain. It sounded like dying. I knew those sounds all too well. I gripped the flashlight tighter and reached down to touch Medic's head, reassuring myself that at least I wasn't alone. "Stay close, boy," I whispered. We picked a direction and started walking, hoping to find our way out of whatever nightmare we'd wandered into. But with each step, I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't moving away from something. We were moving toward it. The fog parted for a moment and I saw it. Standing between two white trees was a figure, tall and still. At first I thought it was a person, maybe a lost hiker or a hunter. I raised my hand to wave. "Hello, are you okay? I'm a park ranger." The figure didn't move. As I got closer, my flashlight beam caught it fully, and my blood turned to ice. It wasn't a person, not anymore. It stood about 8 feet tall, towering over me. Its body was made entirely of bones, animal bones, human bones, all woven together, like a terrible puzzle. Deer antlers crowned its skull. Human finger bones formed its long, spindly arms. Raccoon and fox jaws lined its chest like armor. Everything held together by dark, glistening sinew. But its face was the worst part. The skull wasn't one skull, but pieces of many, forming a patchwork face with a too-wide jaw. And where its eyes should have been were empty sockets filled with swirling red mist. As I stared, frozen in horror, the mist in those sockets began to form shapes, faces, human faces. I recognized them. Johnson, the 19-year-old Marine who bled out under my hands after a mortar attack. Peterson, who died of infection 3 days after I amputated his leg. Williams, Liu, Sanchez, all of them patients I couldn't save in Vietnam. Medic snarled beside me, his body tense and ready to attack. I grabbed his collar, holding him back. "Stay," I whispered. Something told me that if Medic charged this thing, he wouldn't come back. The bone creature tilted its head, studying me. Then it changed. The bones shifted and moved, rearranging themselves before my eyes. Ribs became fingers. Vertebrae twisted into new shapes. Its whole structure flowed like water, never breaking apart, but never staying the same. Then it spoke. "Nurse Hartwell." The voice wasn't coming from the thing's mouth. It seemed to vibrate from the bones themselves, but it was a voice I knew, Johnson's voice, exactly as I remembered it from his final moments. "You let me die." Another shift, and the skull reshaped itself to look more like Peterson's face. "You cut off my leg for nothing." I backed away, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. "You're not real," I said out loud, my voice shaking. The creature took a step toward me. The ground beneath its feet frosted over instantly, patterns of tiny bones spreading outward like a spider web. "We are very real, Rebecca." It knew my name, my first name, not just Nurse Hartwell. I turned to run, but stopped short. All around us, small animal skeletons were rising from the forest floor. Squirrels, rabbits, birds, their bones, clicking as they moved. They formed a circle around us, blocking any escape. I reached for my pack, for anything I could use to defend myself. My fingers closed around my first aid kit. I pulled out a syringe of adrenaline meant for allergic reactions. But as I held it up, the liquid inside turned grey, then crumbled to dust. My bandages unraveled in my pack, transforming into what looked like funeral shrouds. My stethoscope, which I always carry out of habit, began to emit sounds, the death rattles of patients long gone. The creature took another step toward me. With each movement, it seemed to grow larger, more complex, adding bones I hadn't noticed before. "You remember the boy, don't you, Rebecca?" The voice changed again, and I felt my knees go weak. It was the voice of Tommy Chen, an 18-year-old who died during my first week in Vietnam. I'd made a mistake, given him the wrong blood type. He died in minutes. No one knew. I'd never told anyone about that mistake. I'd carried it alone for years. "How do you know about him?" I whispered. The creature's bone face twisted into what might have been a smile. "We know. All your failures." A pain shot through my left side, right where a piece of shrapnel was still embedded near my ribs. It felt like the metal was moving inside me, trying to cut its way out. I gasped and doubled over. Around us, the forest continued to change. The trees stretched and flattened, becoming white tables like the ones in the field hospital. The ground beneath my feet turned from dirt to what looked like blood-stained concrete. The fog formed shapes like hanging IV bags and surgical lights. Medic pressed against me, whimpering now, his earlier bravery replaced by pure terror. I couldn't blame him. I was terrified too. The bone creature raised one long arm, and from the ground, larger skeletons began to rise. Human skeletons, wearing tattered remains of what looked like old Cherokee clothing. They moved jerkily, like puppets on strings, forming a line behind their master. All these years, hiding in your mountains, running from your guilt. Its voice was changing now, becoming a blend of all my dead patients speaking together. Did you think we wouldn't find you? The pain in my side grew worse. I felt warm blood seeping through my shirt where the old wound had somehow reopened. The other shrapnel scars on my body began to ache too, each one a point of fire under my skin. I stumbled backward until I hit a tree. No, not a tree anymore, but a surgical table cold against my back. The whole forest had transformed around us into a nightmarish version of the Da Nang Field Hospital. The bone creature glided toward me, its army of skeletons following. Time for your shift, Nurse Hartwell. So many patients waiting. Behind it, I could see the hollow stretching away, but it wasn't a forest hollow anymore. It was a massive hall made of bones, walls of rib cages, arches of femurs and spines, a ceiling of countless skulls, all staring down with empty eye sockets. A bone church, and I was being dragged inside. I wasn't going to die like this. Not here, not now. Despite the pain, I forced myself to stand straight. Years of working under fire in Vietnam had taught me one thing: when you're scared, fall back on your training. I looked at the bone creature with new eyes, not as a monster, but as a body. Bodies have weak points, joints, connections, places where things can break. Medic, stay, I commanded, and stepped forward to face the thing. The bone creature seemed surprised, its skull tilting to one side. The smaller skeletons around it chattered their teeth like they were laughing. You're made of joints and connections, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. And I know anatomy better than anyone. I backed away slowly, moving toward higher ground. Behind me was one of the old Cherokee burial mounds, rising about 10 feet above the forest floor. If I could get to higher ground, I might have a chance. The creature followed, its bone legs clicking with each step. The army of skeletons moved with it, a wall of yellowed bones and empty eye sockets. You cannot escape us, Rebecca. I reached the base of the mound and started to climb. The dirt was loose under my boots, threatening to give way. It felt wrong to walk on a burial site, but I had no choice. From the higher position, I could see more of the transformed hollow. The bone church stretched for what seemed like miles, much larger than the actual hollow could possibly be. Reality itself had warped around this thing. The creature stopped at the base of the mound. It raised its arms, and more bones erupted from the ground, forming a staircase for it to climb toward me. I had seconds to come up with a plan. I reached into my pack, searching for anything I could use as a weapon. My fingers closed around my flashlight, heavy metal with a solid heft to it. Not much, but better than nothing. "Medic, now!" I yelled. My brave dog lunged forward, not at the creature but at the smaller skeletons surrounding it. He crashed into them, scattering bones in all directions. The skeletons fell apart, but immediately began to reassemble themselves. The distraction worked, though. The bone creature turned to look at Medic, and I saw my chance. I swung the flashlight as hard as I could at the joint where its neck met its shoulder, the spot where the clavicle would connect to the scapula. In a human. The impact sent shockwaves up my arm, but I heard a satisfying crack. Several small bones fell away from the creature's form. It turned back to me, those red mist eyes swirling with rage. "You still fight, like you fought death." It swung one long arm at me. I ducked, but not fast enough. Bone fingers scraped across my cheek, leaving burning trails of pain. I tasted blood. "Every death feeds us," it hissed. "Your guilt makes us stronger." Suddenly I understood. This thing fed on death, on guilt, on the pain of not being able to save everyone. It had been drawing me in from the moment I entered the hollow, using my own need to help against me. My guilt was its power source. Medic was still fighting the skeleton army, but he was getting overwhelmed. They swarmed around him, trying to pin him down. I heard him yelp in pain. "Leave him alone," I shouted, swinging the flashlight again. This time I missed and nearly lost my balance on the mound. The ground beneath my feet shifted. The burial mound wasn't as solid as it looked. I could feel spaces underneath, like the whole thing might be hollow inside. The bone creature climbed higher, now just a few feet away from me. Behind it, the bone church seemed to pulse with an unholy light, red mist swirling through the ossuary. So many couldn't save. So many failed. Its voice had become a chorus of the dead, each word stabbing into me like a scalpel. Every patient I'd lost, every soldier who died under my care, they all spoke through this thing. I was bleeding from multiple wounds now. The old shrapnel injuries had all reopened somehow. My strength was fading fast. I had one last idea. Dropping the flashlight, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the military morphine syrets, my secret stash of painkillers that I'd carried since Vietnam. The creature laughed, a sound like bones breaking. "Medicine cannot help the dead." "It's not for you," I said. "And it's not for me either." With all my remaining strength, I drove my boot heel into the top of the burial mound. The ground cracked, then gave way beneath us. The creature and I both fell as the mound collapsed, revealing a vast underground cavern below. We tumbled down into darkness, landing hard on a stone floor. Pain shot through my leg, broken probably. Around us, the cavern walls were lined with bones, thousands of them, all arranged in perfect anatomical order. This place had been here for centuries. The bone creature rose above me, silhouetted against the faint light from above. It was damaged from the fall, pieces of its structure missing or broken, but still terrifyingly alive. "Now, you join us forever," it said, reaching for me with jagged bone fingers. I looked up at it, and for the first time I wasn't afraid. "You feed on guilt," I said, "on my need to save everyone." I uncapped one of the morphine syrets. "But I'm done carrying that weight. Not everyone can be saved. Not by me, not by anyone." The creature hesitated. "I forgive myself," I said, and meant it. For Tommy Chen, for Johnson, for Peterson, for all of them. The red mist in the creature's eyes flickered, dimming slightly. "No," it hissed. "Yes," I said, "they died. It was terrible, but it wasn't all my fault." With each word, I felt lighter. The guilt I'd carried for years was lifting, but the creature wasn't finished. It lunged at me, bone hands grasping. One sharp finger pierced my side, right where the shrapnel was embedded. Pain exploded through my body. I felt something inside me shift as the creature's finger found the metal fragment and pushed it deeper. "You are mine," it growled. With my last ounce of strength, I plunged the morphine syringe into my thigh and pushed the plunger. The painkiller flooded my system, dulling the edge of the agony. "I am mine," I gasped. Above us, I heard barking. Medic was at the edge of the collapsed mound, looking down at us. "Run, Medic!" I yelled. "Get help!" The smart dog understood. He disappeared from view. The creature's bone finger was still inside my wound, probing deeper. I could feel it touching the metal shard, trying to use it somehow. "Your death will feed us for years." "Maybe," I said, "but you won't have my guilt anymore." I reached up with both hands and grabbed the creature's arm. Instead of pulling away, I pulled it closer, driving the bone finger deeper into my wound until it touched the metal shard fully. The effect was immediate and unexpected. The creature screamed, a sound like 1,000 breaking bones. The red mist from its eyes poured out, swirling around us both. Where bone touched metal, something strange happened. The creature's form began to dissolve, bone by bone, flowing like water into my wound. I felt every piece as it entered me, cold and alien. "What have you done?" it shrieked. I didn't know. I hadn't planned this, but somehow the metal in my body was drawing the creature in, trapping it. The pain was unbearable. The world started to go dark around the edges. The last thing I saw was the bone church, collapsing, the walls of skulls and rib cages falling inward as their master was pulled into my broken body. Then nothing.